I wasn't safe. I never felt safe. He was strangling me. A man there with a meat cleaver. He was just hacking at me.
Oh, God.
Yeah, but that was just my life then. I was alone with my thoughts, my fears. And then that was just the start of becoming like a lost boy. Let's start a graffiti crew. So we created WZ, which stood for Warriors with a Z on the end. There's a gang called WK. They were angry that I was writing up WZ because the initials were similar. Like, threats were being made and then this thing was escalating. I never had a fight in my life. I looked onto the floor and there was a piece of concrete. I started hitting him round the head with it and then all hell broke loose. That's when I went from like this vulnerable little child to like the leader of a violent London graffiti gang. Because of that incident, we were told we were going to go to Feltham Young Offenders. Like, I didn't even understand the seriousness of what I had done. It was brutal. It was horrific, man. I would just attract like the maddest situations. Yeah, I looked to the right and I looked at the cell card and it said Huntley, and it was Ian Huntley next to me in the cell.
Not the most ideal of neighbours. And we need to understand, because if we don't listen to people like you, how the hell are we supposed to learn how to help fix the boys that could turn into to you, the you that you became?
My journey through the prison system over the last few years, I've worked in 26 prisons. I'm going out to HMP Windmill Hill in Gibraltar to work out there, paint murals, speak, to the prisoners. And I've now been invited to the Gibraltar Literary Festival.
Wow.
Amongst David Williams, Sir Jeremy Hunt, Wayne Sleep, Alex Partridge. And then I scroll down and there's the Lost Boyz. Yeah, I'm very proud of that. Yeah.
Good. She's making me well up again. I don't know what's wrong with me today. Justin, welcome to The New Mind. We've been talking for a considerable amount of time already. That's my fault, because I'm really intrigued by you, and you've got probably one of the most layered stories that I've come across. I've made a conscious effort not to watch your other podcasts that you've done. You've done a massive one with James English. You've done Sean Atwood. You've since done the Blue Tick Show. So you've done some huge podcasts, but I didn't want to watch them because I want to get a different flavour out of you today, although we do have to cover the story. Because I think the listeners are going to need to understand your greatness in terms of your ability to survive, but also you think in a really incredible way. You've touched a little bit on the law of attraction for different things that you've been able to do. So let's go all the way back to the beginning. And I know you've already said like you've got quite an autistic way of telling the story. So if I have to butt in to layer in, then fine.
Yeah, just butt in. So it makes it fresher, because I'm used to telling my story and I can literally speak for an hour and a half, 2 hours just without taking a breath. I see it as like I'm MCing like on a mic. Yeah.
So it just comes out like a pattern.
Yeah.
So if I do need to interject, I will. But right, let's start at the beginning. Tell me about yourself, Justin.
So I was born in 1984 in southwest London, or the London Borough of Sutton, into a racially mixed family. My mum being mixed white British and Anglo-Indian. My dad being mixed Sri Lankan and Burmese. Dad left very early. So I was just raised by my mum's side. And I'd say my granddad on that side, who was Anglo-Indian, wasn't around either. So it was just me and my sister, two mixed Asian kids in a large white working class family back in, early 80s in quite a rough and racist area.
So that's the beginning. We're dealing with racism from the outset, because you look different to the rest of your relatives, and you're in an area that was perhaps not particularly friendly about that. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. It was you're in a different time. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
On a council estate, the Ben Hill estate in Sutton, London Borough of Sutton, and you're in a different time, different generations. So people had a different sort of outlook on race. There wasn't a lot of Asian families around, or black families. There were sort of few and far between. So
and also, even if there were, I guess it would be even more unusual to see, two brown kids with a white family.
Yeah,
so that stands you out. Even if you are surrounded by other black and brown people, you're now in a situation where you're in a white family. So it is a different experience, because your identity is somewhat, let's say, more confusing. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's fair. And I wouldn't have known as a child. You don't know, obviously, very young age.
No.
Didn't know that I was any different. I thought up until, I don't know, probably about 8, 9, thought I was white like my cousins.
So you didn't make the connection?
No, until, someone punched me in the nose and called me a packy, and I ran back home crying with a bleeding nose asking what a packy was to my mum. And that's when I sort of knew that became aware that I was different. Yeah.
But from what my understanding is, like, that was not a one-off incident. It was quite horrific.
Yeah, horrific. So say that was like 9 years old. First, big traumatic incident when I was just 3 years old. So my mum had a boyfriend, Gary, who was also white, went on to become my stepdad. And there was a social gathering at his house. And I was left in the garden. He owned a large Doberman dog. They had quite a fierce reputation back then in the mid-80s, 90s, like with the Rottweiler.
That's right.
And left in the garden playing with my ball, went to retrieve the ball, 3 years old. And then the dog just gets me round the head. So still got his bottom jaw scar on the side of the temple, top jaw scar across the top of the head, and his tooth up by the eye. And he's just shaking me around the garden.
Oh my God.
And then obviously parents heard the screams. They got the dog off of me, wrapped my head in a towel and took me off to hospital to be stitched up. But no tests were done on my brain for a brain traumatic injury. But after that, I started to bang my head to get to sleep. So as a toddler, head stitched up, I'm banging my head on the pillow to get to sleep. And as the light's coming through the bedroom window in the flat where I lived, and I'm sort of waking up, I'd bang my head to come back round. But no one that looked after me put two and two together that, I could have had
self-soothing, isn't it?
Yeah.
So that's clearly a sign of, obviously people around you weren't aware of what to look for, but you were obviously in need. Your brain was searching for something. You were self-soothing in some way, shape or form.
Yeah. It's called rhythmic movement disorder, right, which is a child sleeping disorder that can come from like a head injury.
Yeah.
But a couple of things that stood out to me then is that, the dog didn't get put down, and I would go back to
the place where the dog was.
Yeah, I'd go back to the place and I'd be...
No one cared?
They mustn't have cared, or...
Well, they didn't know that you would have been petrified of that dog.
Well, I used to have, living in them flats, I used to have like a nightmare a wolf was coming for me, which would obviously, which is the dog in my mind.
Makes sense.
And then I'd go back to my stepdad's house, which was his mum's house, and the dog would be on the other side of the conservatory door, the glass door, and I'm playing with my toys there and it's looking at me through the...
Oh my God.
So...
What were you well, you wouldn't have known what you were thinking.
Yeah, I don't know what I was thinking, but then next thing that happened was I got something called Guillain-Barré syndrome.
Yes.
Where
awful.
Yeah, where it's like a disease that attacks your nervous system.
It's so painful.
Yeah, and then I couldn't walk for maybe 6 weeks, I think.
How old were you then?
I was about 4 or 5 years old.
That is a debilitating condition.
Yeah.
Just for those that don't know of it, it is debilitating.
And then I was in a children's hospital, but I'm sure that I was left in the children's hospital. I don't think my mum stayed there with me all the time. So I was just on this ward playing with my Ghostbusters toys underneath the bed. But then I started pinpointing these things together about sleeping under things. So I was a runaway. And in houses, if there was loads of us staying there, I would sleep under the table. Or if... at this old youth club we used to break into, I would sleep under the table, it was like
safety.
And then in prison when I was mentally unwell, I'd sometimes sleep under the bed. But it goes all the way back to that
original event.
Yeah.
So in your childhood, you're dealing with a very, very horrific dog attack, and then racism on top. How bad did the racism get? I'm not brushing over the dog incident, but...
Well, another incident happened before that,
right.
Which is...
But before the dog?
No,
before
the racism stuff. So it's significant. So we was living on this estate, Ben Hill, and I would be sent to a childminder's across the other side of the estate. And then I don't know where my sister was on this day, but I was in the downstairs where the front room was. I was with another child who had, back then we'd call it special needs, probably around the same, I must have been about 5. He was probably around the same age. Don't know where the childminder was. Her son, who was probably early teens, comes down and he's just there with us. And then he pulls something out, and I now know it to be fishing wire. And he goes over to this boy with special needs to start strangling him. And then I must have been like watching on, like terrified. And then he started to come over to me, and then he was strangling me. And then I was like crying, hysterical, thinking, crying for my mum or my mummy back then. And he went back and forth strangling us. Then the childminder reappeared and he disappeared. I must have been praying that my mum come to collect me, and she must have come in the evening, and the next day I was put back into that care.
This is awful. Sorry, like what you've been through even at this stage is just horrific. I'm a mum, right? So I hear this and I can just imagine just this tiny little boy. I don't often well up, but I'm going to, because, and no one's ever seen me do this. I'm going to try not to, because I'm going to lose the ability to do this. But it's awful. It's awful. Just the thought of being strangled with fishing wire and then watching it. It's like the torture of watching it and having it done to you at the same time. Yeah. God, already.
It was just a part of my childhood up until, years till like it was just something that happened. I could never question my mum about it. But that's when my behaviour started changing at such a young age. Yeah. So in infant school, I got a pair of scissors around that time, and then I struck a child on the face with it, cut his lip, and then I was being like interrogated by the teachers. I had my head down, and they was probably asked me what was going on at home, but I stayed in that position. I couldn't communicate, couldn't look in the eyes, and then as everything started spiraling out of control, always just had my head down in front of like the youth offending team, the police, and prison officers in Feltham Young Offenders, and I started to steal at a very young age. I was very sneaky with it, but I would always steal toys or money from the summer fete next to us, but I'd always give the toys and the coins and the money away. But I saw that as my start of being like a people pleaser, trying to keep myself safe for everyone to like me. Another violent incident, I got a boy. He was he couldn't speak, and his family would just let him run around the estate. And then I was on the stairwell with him. Must have been 5 or 6, and then he was trying to communicate with me. I just pushed him down the stairs, and I just ran off. And his head was bleeding. And then there was the family were knocking on my door, but I was just I probably just denied it. Yeah.
There's a story. It's an American girl. I want to say it was back in the 70s or the 80s. And I can't remember the name of the girl, which is really bad. But she had a very violent, neglectful upbringing. And she's being interviewed. There's a clip, you might have even seen it on social media, but there's a clip of her being interviewed by a therapist psychologist at the time. And they're asking her questions. And she says she wants her brother to be killed and she wants to stick pins in her adopted parents. And they were sort of thinking of her as a psychopath. And then the therapist did a very particular technique with her and encouraged the parents to give her really, really strict rules. She had to ask for permission for things. It was really, really strict. And it switched this part of her brain that was turning into, I suppose, what would look like psychopathy. Yeah. And she is now, I think she's a doctor of something, and she's a nurse, sorry. And she's completely switched. But she was very, I mean, she was basically projecting, if you look at psychoanalysis, she was externalizing the aggressor. Yeah. And she was projecting these incidents that she'd experienced. And she was so full of pain and so full of anger that the only way, because of course her brain hasn't developed as a child, same as you, the only way she could make sense or to rid herself of this experience was to externalize the aggressor, which is exactly what you were doing.
Yeah, you can't, at that age, you don't understand what you're doing, do you?
You can't articulate it. Your brain understands to a point, like we've got some cognitive ability, say from 7, But between the ages of 7 and 11, really, it's all in the most immature phase of cognitive awareness. And obviously you're a magnet for what you've experienced. Yeah. So a lot of people internalize the aggressor, self-harm, all these things that they do to themselves, which I know you've got a story of as well. But as a child, often, and I've spoken about this myself, I wasn't always a pleasant person to be around because you're externalizing. You don't have the ability to make sense. You just become very animalistic.
Yeah. You mentioned psychopathy. So I started moving on to things like going out on my own and setting fires. Yeah. I didn't have, the other traits like torturing animals or wetting the bed into adolescence, but there were things I was doing that are very alarming that wasn't being picked up.
Which is just trauma. It's just trauma. But again, we pathologize trauma way too much and give it labels. You've mentioned that to me off camera, but that's so true. Yeah. Instead of looking at the individual and looking at the behaviors and what's happening, risk taking, needing lots of stimulation, needing to externalize the aggressor, all of those things, it makes perfect sense. Yeah. But again, it's not picked up on or it's not noticed because now you're seen as a bad person, because the adults around us, especially at that time in the world, they would look at the child as bad and they would punish rather than try to, help rehabilitate.
People looked at my house. We moved from this estate and my mum and stepdad bought a semi-detached, and people would look at my behaviour or my sister's behaviour and they would lead like, why are they like that? Because our house was clean, we was fed, and we were clothed. Yeah. But there wasn't any affection, anything like that. And
which is a need for a child.
And we was bad kids or we were in trouble, but we were probably crying out for attention.
Well, you needed someone to come and look after you.
Yeah. Like my destructive behaviour when we moved to the new house was continuing. I was setting fires, but I was still so young. I had toy cars and there was a bus stand opposite the house, and I would watch the bus driver get off. Back then didn't have mobiles. They would have a cigarette or go to the BT phone box, and I'd be waiting down the side of the bus stop with my toy cars, and then when he got off the bus I'd put them under the bus wheels, and then when he went back in and started the engine up and my heart would be racing, and then he would drive off and crush my toy cars, and it gave me some sort of sense of it gave me adrenaline, power, adrenaline. And that was part of my destructive behavior, like the setting fires, going off, smashing windows and just doing, like mischievous stuff. But when you're out on the streets, you're going to bump into kids from other dysfunctional families, more hardened kids going through, and it was not, I wouldn't say dangerous, but, you're quite vulnerable. And then that's when I experienced my first racial incident when this kid jumped down from like this tree or something he was climbing, punched me in the nose bleeding, went back home crying, and it was explained to me that I'm mixed Asian, my dad's mixed Sri Lankan and Burmese, and then I just felt this deep overwhelming feeling that I'm different to my family. Quite felt like shame, embarrassed because of my race, and then I had this deep awareness that Asian kids around the area were bullied, or shopkeepers it was called the Paki shop, and they owned like large German shepherds for protection, and I became very aware of my race, and that's when racial bullying started.
So the shame, was it the shame again that you were different? Because obviously being different as a kid, you don't really fully understand that either. You just know you are, and you know that other people don't perceive you as the same or as good as. Yeah. So did you start to think that you weren't as good as other people?
Yeah, not as good. So I would hang around with this group of kids. Their mum would take me to school with another childminder, and my mum was at work all summer. We'd be playing out like around the local area, and started having a fight with this kid. Just little boys having fisticuffs, and then the mum that would take me to schools on the balcony, and she's shouting down to this 10-year-old, we're about 10 years old, she's shouting, "Kick the Packy's head in."
The mum?
Yeah, the mum, yeah. That stayed with me for years and years. And then years down the line, when I'm in prison at my most vulnerable state and have a mental breakdown, the paranoia and finding friendships difficult is because I'm walking to school once summer holidays done with these kids and with that mum, and they're refusing to speak to me, and like the level of like anxiety and fear running through my head and the ruminating, that's all building blocks for a mental crisis later on in life.
I mean,
so
you're how old at that time? 10?
10, yeah. 10 years
By
old.
10 years
Yeah.
old, just to recap for people, because it's going to be a lot to remember for people
Yeah.
listening, you were viciously attacked by a dog, seriously shaken about by a Doberman, with the Doberman after that attack staring at you through the flipping glass door whilst you're playing with your toys. You've obviously got some sort of need to self-soothe, and there's obviously some sort of at least emotional brain injury, if not physical brain injury. Then there's this incident with being strangled by this older boy with fish wire and then watching him do it to somebody else. Then, you're starting to be a bit of a risk taker and self-soothing by externalizing the aggressor. Then there's that racial attack. And now, like, you're obviously going to be, because those first 7 years are so fundamental in brain development. So as your brain is now starting to fuse at the front, frontal lobe is starting to develop, you're starting to now have only this kind of unfiltered hatred towards you or violence towards you, not a lot of affection at home, but dressed, clean, all those things. But the fundamentals are missing.
Yeah.
So obviously, like you say, the foundation of your development is not in any way, shape or form safe or healthy.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's it. I wasn't safe. I never felt safe. Never felt safe. I was alone and alone with my thoughts, my fears. Yeah, and then that was just the start of becoming like a lost boy and like,
Which is the title of your book, which I'll show to the camera before we finish.
Yeah, that was it. So I had a knock on the door. I was upstairs in my bedroom, heard an Asian couple downstairs. Okay, who are these people? Don't know any Asian people. Went downstairs. It was my nan and granddad from my dad's side. I'm just hyper alert of my friends are going to see this Asian couple. It's quite a close-knit community. I'm going to be ridiculed and my race and everything. And they wanted to, they had been looking for me and my sister. My mum didn't tell them that we had moved. And my granddad wanted to take me up to a museum, something like a normal family would do, right? So, next weekend or a couple of weeks later, I'm on this train going up to London and the train comes to a halt. And I look out of the train window as other trains are flying past and I notice this abandoned train carriage and it was covered in colourful writing signatures. And I said to my granddad, like, whoa, what is this? And he said it was graffiti, it was criminal damage. He literally stuck his nose up at it. But I looked across the live rails, see the trains flying past, and I realised that these kids were like risking their lives to go and write their names. And that was like seeing my toy car crushed, but with like writing over it.
Yeah.
Went back to school, stole the teacher's whiteboard marker, started tagging around the local alleyways. And then I met this older group of kids that were like, what's that you're writing? I was writing CVP. We lived on Culvers Avenue and that stood for Culvers Vandal Posse. I was probably 10 or 11. They were like, that's not a tag. You need a tag. So I created this tag called FES. Don't know why, FES. And they said, you need to like paint, not alleyways, you need to go to the train station. So these kids are probably 13, 14. One night they got me out of my house. They took me around to this local train station and they were going to teach me like this thing in graffiti called bushwhacking, hiding in a bush, jumping out, whacking the side of a train with a tack. But it can be, bushwhacking can be if you jump off a train platform as well. So I'm there, it's like early evening and it's dark. Train pulls up, it's going to London Victoria, and they were like, go. And then they just jump down onto the railway tracks and they start spraying their names. And I'm looking and I start writing FES. I could barely reach. There's light shining down on us commuters from a long day looking like, what are these kids doing? And then you hear the hissing of the rail, the doors shut. And then we jump back onto the platform and I see FES on the side of the train going off to London Victoria. And in that young mind, I was thinking, I was going to be like infamous, like the whole London city is going to see my tag. But yeah, it was just really that the start of the graffiti tagging was the start of like an identity.
Yeah.
But also, look at me, I'm here. Someone noticed me. Basically.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what graffiti, for me, that's what graffiti
an
tagging is
identity.
about. Yeah.
Because I suppose at that point, if no one's keeping you safe and no one's giving you an identity you can be proud of, that anonymous infamous thing is like, that makes me special.
Yeah. And within the graffiti community as children, I know there's like men that do graffiti, but as children it was like, and you would meet another graffiti tag, you say, what do you write? And then they would say their tag and they ask you what you write and you'd say yours, and you'd be scanning their face to see if they had recognised, if they've seen you. It's called being up, if your tag's up. Like, so you might go around town seeing this tag everywhere, that person's up. So, and then you get respected within your community, but you're just kids, for what I believe, searching for, like, looking for attention.
Looking for belonging.
Yeah.
Would you say a lot of those kids were in a lot of sort of emotional pain, even if they weren't aware of it at the time?
I would say so.
And that's why I mean, I don't know if you've seen The Gate Outside. I encourage artwork like that, because I think the story behind it and the reason that people do it is so important. So I wanted that there. And also because this is quite a boring street with lots of HMOs on it, and I thought we need something just to stand out, to say we're here, like, you know. And I love graffiti art. I think the stories and the communities behind it have got such a rich tapestry of information if you tap in. And even just listen to you then, like, it's such a important part of your story, isn't it?
Yeah, so tagging, what someone that doesn't really know graffiti, or they might know graffiti, but you can actually see like an energy, a vibe, an emotion in a graffiti tag as well. Yeah. So like some sort of London styles of graffiti tagging, you can do really sharp edges and stuff. It's like a bit more like what people would say aggy, a bit more aggressive style of tagging, or you can go like to different areas and they're more like a flowy, bubbly style of tagging. Yeah. And that's a different type of energy. Do you know what I mean? So there's so many layers to it.
The psychology behind everything is so interesting. But even that, because like you say, mostly it's kids that will do that. But I think the one big thing that I pulled up on there is that sense of community and belonging.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah,
because that's what, especially now, like kids are lacking that. I would love to see graffiti thought of in a more positive way. I don't think it's quite as bad as it was in the 80s and the 90s, where people, like you say, your granddad really stuck his nose up at it. Yeah. But I actually think I've always loved it. Yeah.
Well, so, you know, graffiti started in the late 60s, people just writing their name, like Mike, and then their street number in New York in the ghettos, Mike 171. Yeah. Or Tacky. And then that moved on to the subway, where it would be the most basic tag, still just like normal handwriting in a spray can. Then that started turning thicker, and then it got a little outline around it, and then it started turning into like styles and different lettering styles and stuff. And then it started turning into just, you know, bigger and bigger things, and then got like
it's art, really, isn't it? It really is. I mean, I know it is, but a lot of people, even with the tags, they don't realize how much personality or whatever is involved. So that at that point you found this energy to belong with.
So found that, then it got left for a couple of years. Then we moved to Malden, which is more southwest London, first stop on the Northern Line. And I was bunking school, couldn't understand at the time why I couldn't handle it in a class environment. It's literally sensory overload for me. So in the day, I'm running out of school and I'm walking along the stretch of railway. I'm getting to St Helier train station, just bunking the trains, hanging around. And then I see a kid on the platform. He had ink stains, paint stains on his hands, like telltale signs of graffiti tagger. His name was Joe. His tag was Bath, and we started hanging around together. He was 2 years older than me. And we're like, let's start a graffiti crew, like a group of kids, or it was just us. We write our crew name around. So we created WZ, which stood for Warriors with a Z on the end. We started spraying it around the London Borough of Merton. We're bunking school, we're shoplifting. More kids that weren't in school started to see it because they're noticing it sprayed around town. You're bumping these other kids. We start, you know, all hanging around together. It's growing and growing. And one day we get onto a bus. Haven't been called a packy for a while since I moved from the other area. Get onto the bus. The buses back then were covered in graffiti. There's WZ written all over it. Our tags are already on it. And then there's a lines through our tags, line through WZ, line through. My tag was 706 then. I chose the number 706. There was a line through it and it said something like, "Stop writing WZ, you packy." It said something like that written on the bus. My friends are laughing now. I'm embarrassed. I'm not a fighter. I line it back. It was by a gang called WK. Yeah, they were angry that I was writing up WZ. It was because the initials are similar. But now, like, peer pressure is real. I can't turn around and go, "Oh yeah, I can't. We got to stop writing WZ." So put a line through it, and then like threats were being made, and then we started spraying WZ at the front of the bus top windows on the 213 bus, which was going from our area, into their borough. So when they're hanging around on the streets, they look up, WZ's coming through. And then this thing was escalating, a lining war. And there was a gang called Shadow Crew, more hardened group of kids who I would have been very wary of. But we were friendly, and they had a fight with WK. Now, this was, for me, I would have classed myself as like a Jack Russell around a bunch of like pit bulls, and I'm shouting my mouth off, the smallest one, right? Saying, "Yeah, I'm going to go and get WK, do all these things." Never had a fight in my life apart from the little scuffle. And I wasn't a tough kid. You know, if boys were boisterous and punched me in the arm, it was like really like hurt me sort of thing. Yeah. And so I weren't a fighter. And then come Friday, like I'd said, "Yeah, we're going to go and get WK." All of these kids started turning up at Malden Station once schools had finished, like 4:30, about this kid. People call me Sevens for short. "Yeah, this kid's Sevens. He's going to go and, like, you know, get WK." And obviously I ain't had a fight. I'm absolutely terrified now, but I'm just like having to run with it. And the more hardened kids had started joining WZ, and there was this boy called Crazy Steve, and he come from a really violent background. His dad was a violent alcoholic when he was younger. I didn't know his dad like that. I just knew him as an alcoholic. But his dad had heard about this fight and built his son, who was about 12 years old, built him half a broomstick with a Stanley knife blade coming out of one end, screws on that end, and a spike on the bottom. And,
Jesus Christ.
And literally walked him over to us and waved him off like good luck for the fight that I was leading these kids to. So yeah,
bloody hell.
So then I must have been thinking, like, you know, I hope like they're not there. You know, what if I'm going to get punched? What if I'm going to, you know? And then we get on the bus. Buses were driving past. They wouldn't let. There was like 35 kids in the end. They wouldn't letting us on. And then we finally get down to where they are. And we get to this alley. It's down the side of New Malden train station. And there's like fly-tipped waste everywhere. You know, dumped tyres, fridges, just a load of waste. And then it's all overgrown, and it's quite an eerie environment for what was about to come. And I had the Shadow Crew boys with me that were bigger. I never knew they were carrying knives. And come to this party in the bush, and WK was sitting there, and I used to be friends with some of them before the lining war started, and they were smoking hash on a bongs. They're all stoned. And then we got there, and then they're there, and obviously they're like, you know, we're talking seconds, but they must have been thinking, "Oh shit, like, you know, what's gonna happen?" And someone shouted, "Set it, Sevens," meaning like for me to start it. Like I said, never had a fight in my life, and this boy in front of me said, "No, Sevens, I'm your friend." And I looked onto the floor, and there was a piece of concrete, and I picked up a bit of concrete, and I started hitting him round the head with it. And then everyone just all hell broke loose. Crazy Steve pulled out his weapon, started beating people around the head with it. Shadow Crew pulled out knives. People were stabbed, and everyone was just running in different directions.
Oh my God.
And I ran up the railway embankment, climbed over into the station, jumped onto the train, and then Crazy Steve was behind me, and we were the only two to get on a train out of there. And then I looked, and he pulled out his weapon, and all bits of flesh and hair in the remaining screws, but he was like laughing. I can still see it to this day. He was like laughing, really like excited and happy and that.
Oh God.
And we got back to Malden, all the other kids turned up. But this is the maddest thing, that the shadow crew were, you know, these more hardened kids, and they were coming over to me, and everyone was patting me on the back.
Yeah, like you're the big guy.
They believed that I had basically organised all of that, and then that's when I went from like this vulnerable little child to like the leader of the Warriors, like a violent London graffiti gang. And then because of that incident, and because of the fear, like me living in fear and not feeling safe anyway, I had to become this character that was basically trapped in that world, and I had to keep on up in the violence level to
maintain.
Yeah, and to protect myself, basically, yeah. Always thinking, always thinking, yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I mean, this story for someone so young is wild, but also incredibly sad.
Yeah, I was 14 then. We were very lucky because WK came back the next day for us. We was in a party in Tooting. Someone phoned us. It was like WK are in Malden. They come back with men. We like little boys. You know, they wanted revenge. They come back with men. But yeah, very lucky would have been like, yeah, hospitalized. Yeah, definitely.
Otherwise, so you being at that party meant you weren't where they thought you were going to be.
Yeah. They came to Malden where we would hang around.
Oh my God. I mean, there are moments in life where you just think, is someone watching over me?
Yeah, a lot of times. Yeah.
Jesus. So, okay. I'm glad I didn't listen to your story before, because I think my reactions are quite organic.
Yeah.
I wanted it to be, because I knew it was quite a hefty story that you've got, and an awfully sad one as well. Because I just think about the kids that are going through it now, because it is it's heartbreaking what's happening at the minute. Yeah. And what happened to you? Like, don't get me wrong.
Yeah, but I don't look there. I don't look there and feel sorry for that child. I've done some work on the like inner child work, but I don't feel sorry for that child. You know, I was committing violent offences. Like, I'm here to show the build up of why kids act like that way. Yeah. But, you know, I'm committing violent offences, and then violent offences continued, and you have to...
I feel sorry for that child though. And I know you don't. And I actually think that's quite admirable in a way. But I also think... I just think you were just a little boy. Yeah,
I was. And when I look at the pictures, you know, I went past a bus garage the other day in the area. I've got my little boy.
How old's he?
My beautiful little boy, Lorenzo. He's 5 years old, same age as me when I was strangled. And he's obsessed with like buses and trucks and things like that. We go past a bus garage and you can see right down the back of him. And he was like, that's where they sleep, Daddy. That's where they sleep. And, you know, you forget things. And I'm like, when I was 13, 14 years old, I was sleeping in that bus garage, right? And I still can't get my head around it. So I'd sneak into the bus garage. I'd walk right to the back. There was old buses. Quickly get on one. No one's seeing me there. And I'm sleeping in the bus garage on my own. And then I still can't get my head around. I had a clean house. Mum and stepdad worked. They weren't abusing us or anything. But I found it more safer, or more like... I preferred to go and sleep at a local bus depot on my own, when like you'd sleep on the seat and then you'd wake up in the morning and your skin's burning from whatever nastiness is on the seat. Yeah. But I just couldn't, just a thought when I'm, in two different worlds of being a dad out with my son, and then,
I wonder if that's to do with you didn't feel like you fitted in at home.
Yeah.
That wasn't who you felt like you were.
I don't know, because my sister was running away from home as well, and neither of us was being like physically or, you know, sexually abused or anything there. I think it was just, there was just this level of like coldness, or you weren't there. And then, children are to be seen, not heard. That was old school.
But that's neglect of the child's needs. Yeah. So although people say this all the time to people that have been sexually abused, not just me, but anyone that's been sexually abused, but it's not as bad. It's not as bad as yours because you were sexually abused. And I always say neglect of love and emotional needs being met is absolutely emotional abuse for that child. I'm not saying that it's the same type of abuse. I'm saying that if you're neglecting your child's needs to feel loved, to feel cared for, not just practical care. If they are to be seen and not heard, like, why did you have them in the first place?
Yeah.
Now, I know that sometimes things happen and people don't have abortions, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but once you've made that commitment to have a child, it is your duty to love that child.
Yeah.
You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to get it right all the time. But if both children are running away, they are looking for something. You were searching for something. You were searching to feel something.
Yeah. Well, I found what I thought at the time was love and a family within a gang. But all of us are, kids from
broken homes.
Broken homes or dysfunctional families, some worse than others. And then they become your brothers, and your town becomes like your home, and you fight for your town.
Well, that's why you were sleeping on the buses, because it was the beginning of you trying to feel something.
Yeah.
And feel like a belonging somewhere.
Yeah.
And if you felt like that's where you belonged, over a clean house where the sheets are clean and you've got food in your belly, what does that tell you about the lack?
Of course. With the the gang's your new family, but it's obviously completely like unstable and chaotic,
and dangerous,
and zero boundaries. So I committed my first really violent robbery. I robbed somebody on a train with 14 years old, actually. I robbed someone on a train, a kid, with a hacksaw. I broke into the emergency cabin, and graffiti taggers would break into there, just nick things. There was a saw, and I went down a train. I robbed this kid for his gold. And me, my friend Bath, and Nemza, we were arrested, and we were told we were going to go to Feltham Young Offenders. Like, I didn't even understand the seriousness of what I had done or why I had done it. Well, I knew I was trying to impress my friends because they had done a robbery, and I had to keep the
had to keep the level up.
Yeah, but I didn't understand how bad that was, and we got only 4 months in Feltham Young Offenders, but Feltham was a hardcore place back then. 26 years ago. October the 3rd, 1999 was they didn't understand ADHD, didn't understand autism,
trauma.
You was a young offender, you was a prisoner. Now kids on the A side of Feltham, 15 to 17-year-old, they're classed as children, even though some of them are big as men.
Yeah.
Done a lot of work in Feltham. But back then it was brutal. And like I said, tiny little kid, vulnerable, and probably 2 or 3 days in, started getting bullied in this cell. I didn't say it, the childminders. After I was sent back to the childminders after being strangled, the physical abuse stopped, but then they would lock me on the balcony.
Who's they? The older?
The childminder.
The childminder?
Yeah, to lock me on the balcony. I can only now think that it was because I had said something about a son or something. So they'd locked me on the balcony. I'm trapped. I'm running back and forth crying. So when I enter that cell in Feltham Young Offenders for the first time, door closes, trapped in there. And the sensory overload, 3 a.m, other crazy kids pinging the pipe that goes through, ping, 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 ping. Everyone screaming, shouting out the window, telling people to suck. It was, they say, suck your mum. Yeah, that's it, suck your mum. They're called the other cell number. And then they would make kids sing out of the window. And I remember my cell, I always thought it was cell number 5. I think in my talks I've said cell number 5, but I was there probably last year and it was cell number 10.
That's interesting that you thought of it different.
Yeah, it's because it was the corner cell and I would just thought it was number 5, but it was cell number 10. And at night I'm there and then I could just hear people shouting, "Hey, number 10, come to your window now." And they were all like little boys, but they would do the deepest voice.
Yeah.
"Come to your cell now." Yeah. And you're like, "Oh my God, come to your window," come to your window. And I'm like, "Oh my God," they're calling me and my friend Nems next door. And there's little holes in the pipe. It's going, "Justin, bruv, don't go to the window. Don't go to the window." "Oh my God, they come to your window now." "Oh my God, if I don't go to the window, they're going to kill me." And then Nems is going, "Don't go to the window." And I go to the window. I'm like, "Yeah." And I sing "Bar Bar Black Sheep, sing Bar Bar Black Sheep now." Everyone's screaming, howling. The cell windows open slightly. They're banging it. Bang, 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 bang. And I'm like, proper panic attack now. Oh my God, what do I do? And then I went to the window. I sing "Bar Bar Black Sheep, baby." And the whole unit screaming, banging. Nems is going, no, bruv, no. And I didn't know, but that was called being fraggled off. So if you got bullied, got made to sing out the window, you were a fraggle, and you were sent to the vulnerable persons unit, which in reality was a unit for bullied kids, or kids with, like, basically nowadays in film it'd be neurodiverse issues that can't cope. And then you got fraggled off. But as a 15-year-old, so I was 15 then, that shame and embarrassment, you know, you thought that was going to live with you forever.
Yeah, it feels permanent, doesn't it?
So I was released from Felton, but just after I was released, to show what Felton was like back then, a prisoner, Zahid Mubarak, was an Asian boy, was getting out the next day. He was sharing a cell with a known racist, Robert Stewart.
He was sharing a cell with a known racist?
Yeah,
they put them together?
Racist. Yeah, he was put together.
Why?
Yeah. Just, there was a huge inquiry, from what I know, just like people not doing their jobs. But
that feels purposeful to me.
Yeah.
Why would you do that?
It was never proven.
But that does feel purposeful.
Yeah.
Why? So someone did that on purpose. There's no way that's an accident.
Yeah, there was accusations where they called it gladiator wars, where officers would put two bullies in together and whatever. That was the accusations. It was never proved, but there was a huge inquiry that shook up the whole, like, prison system.
Oh my God.
Well, I didn't even say what Robert Stewart done. He removed a table leg and battered Zahid to death in his sleep, and he was being released the next day.
He's been released the next day.
Yeah.
Oh God.
Yeah, so that was Felton was a scary place. Was a very scary place and traumatizing place. I think I self-harmed for the first time, or I thought I was hearing voices, but it was my own voice terrorizing me. Could never work that one out.
Yeah, like the inner bully.
Yeah. I remember finding this book behind the cupboard, and I hadn't read a book before, and it was this man that was like, he was like surviving at sea on, like, a homemade raft because he come off a shipwreck or something.
Bit like Castaway. Have you seen that?
Yeah,
I've seen.
I can't remember it. I know that he makes the football.
Yeah.
And he was out in the ocean on his own. But as I was reading it, I felt like I was that person in this environment, like, on my own.
Yeah.
And you never, like, they used to wake you up in the morning. They would play Kiss FM. I think it might say 7 a.m. They would just turn it on full blast, yeah? And that was your wake-up call. And I never forget the songs, yeah? It's going to be fun, yeah? Christina Aguilera, Genie in a Bottle, yeah? And Mary J. Blige, No More Drama. No More Drama is a deep one because the lyrics are deep, but when I hear Genie in a Bottle, but yeah, it takes me straight back there, yeah.
Did that bother you for a while, those songs?
Yeah.
Do they still now?
No.
You've managed, because you've done a lot of extensive work, which we'll come on to, but...
Yeah, so I was released back into the area, and my credibility just went through the roof. Everyone loved me because I'd been to Feltham, the girlfriend for the first time, and things started to get really out of hand really, really quickly. It was winter time in Malden. We started to hang around Crazy Steve's house. And he started to do stuff like worship the devil, whatever that... Well, I can't even really explain what that means, but he was saying he was worshipping the devil. He was saying there was these evil spirits in the house. We're starting to take ecstasy. We're doing, like, rise and chokes where you would smoke on the bong and you would, like, strangle yourself. So, like, with the smoke inside you, and then you're just like a wake up on the floor like a zombie. It was horrendous. And he... started to tag, like, the walls in his house. He kicked his dad out, so now it's like a WZ house, and there's all these boys that in and out of Feltham, and we're just getting high whilst this guy Crazy Steve's telling us there's, like, demons in the house. And then two boys start having a fight, and he tells us there's a spiritual warfare going on. And we was like, brainwash us. We were absolutely terrified, and people started self-harming in the house. And
oh my God.
On the times that his dad come back with his drinking partner, and Crazy Steve saw us as his family. Like, he'd kill for us, die for us. I mean, you know, we're talking like he's probably 13 years old then, but he was big. And he had a machete, and his dad was there on the day he was back with his friend Irish, having a drink. And then in front of us, the drinking partner disrespected Crazy Steve. And then we went back to the bedroom, which was covered in graffiti now. It's like dripping. It was horrendous. And he got his machete. And then he's like, I'm going to go in there. And we're like holding him back. But we couldn't hold him back. And he went in and then he just went to go. He went for his dad's drinking partner's head. But he managed to put his arm up and he severed his arm and disabled his arm. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was horrific.
Was it blood everywhere?
Yeah.
And you saw that?
Yeah.
I mean, were you desensitized to that at that point?
Yeah, definitely desensitized to it. But there was just like an escalating level of like madness. The self-harm started to get really bad, and it came from that house because my best friend Joe said to me one day, he's like, do you believe in that devil? And I'm like, pure panic attack. I was terrified by it. I would go home and I'd say to my mum, can I sleep on your bedroom floor? And she'd be like, yes, I'm sleeping on the bedroom floor. She's not even asking me why I'm sleeping on the bedroom floor. I was terrified to be on my own at home. And
how old are you? 15?
About 15, yeah. And then she was going off she had met someone else. My stepdad and her got divorced and she met someone else. She's just traveling, going to Goa, traveling, and I'm just there in the house or in what I call the House of Horrors in Malden. And it was New Year's Eve. Me and Joe were drinking. We was in his bedroom. He starts punching the mirror, cracks all the mirror. He's got blood on his hand. And then we're proper hyped up. And then he gets a razor, or I get a razor from his bathroom, and then I start cutting my arm, and then he starts cutting his arm. And then we just start putting blood on each other, covered in blood. And then he said, I know someone knocked on the door. It was a WZ boy, seeing if we was going to go to this party. And we opened the door covered in blood, and the WZ boy was like, oh my God. He was like petrified and sort of literally ran off. And we were like, okay. So we look really scary now. So we went out onto the streets like that.
Yeah. Got
onto a bus, saw shadow crew members. They were scared of us because we're covered in blood.
Yeah.
And then I spoke to my cousin, and he was at a pub in South London where he was getting served at 15, 16 years old. And he was with a guy that had just got out of prison called Kenneth. He had got out of prison for attempted murder. He must have been 17 years old, really violent. Or he went away for a violent offence. But he was known as a tough kid. He had a reputation. But where WZ were the new kids on the block, he immediately came to us. So there in South London, we said, yeah, we're coming up there. We're coming to the pub. There's a pub you can get served in. Start making our way up, tube, buses. And we were there. It was like lively on the streets, New Year's Eve. And we were approaching groups of kids covered in blood, like two of us up to say 5, 6 people, hoods up saying, what? And then they immediately, come on the aggressive. When we pull the hoods back, they see the blood and they're like, what? They're just thrown. They don't know what to do and they're scared. So we're like, now we feel like we got this power, and we walk into this pub, find my cousin and Kenneth sitting there drinking. We're drinking, and then the pub owner's like, the landlord's like, look, lads, you need to be going in the toilet, cleaning that blood off, or you're out of here. Yeah. So we're in the toilets, cleaning the blood off, come back out. My cousin and Kenneth are being dragged out of the pub because they've been they went into the kitchen, nicked eggs, they're egging the pub whilst we're cleaning the blood off. So now we're kicked out onto the streets, heavily intoxicated, don't even know what time it is. There's this party going on back in our area. We've got to get to this party. Look across the road and there's this guy staring at me. And I'm basically staring back at him. He approaches, get into an argument. He pulls out a knife. Kenneth gets the knife, we beat the guy, and then we run off into the night. We split up. So it's me and Joe again, my cousin and Kenneth, and then they go off another way. We meet back at the party, and we meet up at this party. It's now like the new year. We've missed the countdown. We're approaching the party and we can hear shouting. And my girlfriend was called, or my ex-girlfriend, the girl that I started seeing when I got out, her name was Danielle. 15 years old, come to me and pulled out a scan picture and was like I'm pregnant, yeah. So I'm like saying, that ain't my effing baby, blah, 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 blah. Pure chaos, volatile. And then the stepdad's phoning me up. You've got my daughter pregnant. I'm like, and then she came with a scan picture, and then I believed it was real. So then I'm at the St. Helier Hospital with her and her mum. At the first, I wouldn't have known this was like the first scan, and then I'm like working out the dates and stuff, and I'm like, this isn't my baby, yeah. And then like I could see the look on the mum's face and Danielle's face, and then I didn't have a voice, you know. I'm a little boy, and I just left the hospital and I walked home really angry, like they've tricked me to say that, you know, I'm the dad, yeah. Well, the mum hasn't tricked me, the daughter has. And then I get home and I'm just, my mum's at work and I find a bottle of her red wine. I'm drinking a red wine, angry. And then comes to like 5 o'clock and I look out the window and Danielle and her mum pull up. I'm like, do you know what? They're actually going to they're going to come to apologize to me for what they done. But then they got out and they went to the neighbour's house to say it was his baby.
What?
Yeah.
The neighbour?
Yeah. Who would hang around with WZ. But years later when I spoke to him, he said it wasn't his baby. And and then I think she ended up having an abortion, which is obviously sad. But going forward from that to this madness that's happening with me and Joe trying to make our way to the party, my cousin and Kenneth, we get to the road, we meet up somehow, and then we get to the road and I can hear Danielle screaming and shouting, and she's having like a argument or like a fight with these big geezers. Like they come steaming out of the house, see us, and think like we're with her, start attacking my friend Joe, start punching him. We all run off. We meet back up on like local parader shops, and then my friend Joe is having an argument with Danielle. You've got me effing bottled, blah, 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 blah. Everyone's kicking, everyone's drunk. It's like, it's a horrible, when I think that horrible vibe, horrible energy. We're into the new year, probably like 1 a.m. Joe's been bottled. He's got cuts up his arms. I've got cuts up my arms. Kenneth's got a knife on him, and it's just horror. It's a horrible vibe. My cousin Tony, he was always the peacemaker, and then I had that side to me as well. So I was like to Danielle and her friend, I was like, right, let's go, let's leave this. You're not fighting my friend. Let's go. So we started walking off. We walk up to St. Helier Hospital where we had the scan. We're sitting on the wall, and then I don't know that Danielle's phoned her mum. I'm looking up in the distance. Always alert, always looking side to side. And the car's coming and it's sort of swerving and it pulls up and he's like, get in the car, Justin, get in the car, Danielle. And the friend, we're going to get him. And I'm like, going to get who? Like, you're going to get my friends? Like, going to get my friends? Just took your daughter away from that. They jump in the car, they go. Phone starts ringing about 4 or 5 minutes later. It's Danielle's friend. Danielle's mum, she's been stabbed. Screaming, crying, start running back down towards town, get to town. Her mum's laying on the floor. What I found out is they've jumped out the car, started attacking my friends. Kenneth, high on ecstasy and alcohol, just pulls out the knife and stabs the mum in the stomach. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and then and then my friends had disappeared.
What happened to the mum?
Well, she was taken to hospital.
She obviously survived.
She survived. Yeah, I don't know exactly what happened. I know she was stabbed in the stomach. I was in the hospital with Danielle, her stepdad. They're obviously distraught.
This is before the pregnancy thing, is it?
This is after the pregnancy.
This is after the pregnancy thing.
After the pregnancy thing, yeah.
So the mum was crazy to go and do that. I mean,
yeah, it was just like, it's just not a level of like thinking, is it?
You're
like,
not rational. Yeah. If you're making that decision to go and get them, like, obviously she didn't expect to be stabbed, but that is not a clever idea.
Well, you can, what people don't realize and fail to realize, like, usually murder happens within a 5 minute of madness.
Yeah.
I know people, you could be back, and people get pulled into murder as well.
Yeah.
Like someone, I won't name the case. I won't know the case, but I knew someone, not really well, but we knew each other when we was younger, and he had fallen out with his partner or something. I don't know the ins and outs of the relationship, but there's obviously back and forth, there's jealousy, there's everything. He gets his friend, the partner's with a new boyfriend, gets the friend, said, let's go down there. And no one's thinking straight.
No, you're right.
No one's thinking straight.
Yeah.
That they arm themselves, serving life in prison now. Do you know what I mean?
So it's like you say, it's madness.
You can't get drawn in to people's, you have to take a step back and think logical. Obviously, when you're young, you don't.
And that's the problem, is that if someone isn't putting boundaries in place for you, like you mentioned sleeping on your mum's floor and your mum not really going, what's going on? If someone isn't questioning and teaching you boundaries at 13 years old, how are you supposed to zoom out and make a rational decision? You don't have the foundation for it. That's why those first few years are so important.
Well, you wouldn't, but I don't think, if those boundaries, that love and that was there, I wouldn't be in that position.
Of course. That's exactly the point, isn't it? Is that we talk about that you can't get involved. Now, there comes a point where you're 25 years old, your brain's fully developed, you've learnt a bit in life, you have to take some accountability. But when you're 13, 14, 15 years old, that is the role of your parents, society, the community. That is the role. It is to infiltrate where a child is in trouble and not judge, but try and help. Now, if that child is of danger to themselves or to other people, there has to be strategy involved. But I don't feel like any of that was going on in your case.
Yeah, there wasn't. I went back to Feltham Young Offenders. I think I robbed someone else. Kenneth got a life sentence. Another WZ boy, my friend Stitch, stabbed a kid, killed him, life sentence. And then I would phone her, or I'd say phone home. I'm phoning Joe. I weren't phoning home. I was phoning Joe because that was my brother. And then one day, someone else answered the phone, and I realised something was up straight away. And they told me that Joe had been found dead behind the shops where we would congregate. I was released from prison maybe a month later. I went to where Joe died, and I'm like, I didn't know what attachment was. And I was like distraught. That was like my brother, my protector as well. He's 2 years older than me. I remember I've done EMDR, which we'll come to. Yeah. And then we had to do protection. And I just was absolutely bawling, which I'm not ashamed to say. And I just twigged all these years later why I took Joe's death so badly, because it was the first person to protect me.
And you felt loved by.
Yeah. And he never ran away when it came on top in a gang fight.
He was always there.
He would take a beating with me, so his death affected me badly, and I started sleeping where he died. I started my mental health started deteriorating rapidly. He died in this little stairwell, and I would go up onto the roof, and we would sit up on the roof, and we'd watch over our town, Malden, and there'd be police looking for us, gangs looking for us, and we were just up there, and we look down. So now I'm arming myself with a meat cleaver because I've got beef with other gangs. I've got a meat cleaver on my waistband. I can't understand why my other friends aren't mourning. Sleeping where he died, drinking alcohol, got a meat cleaver on me, and then I'm just got these gangs from Croydon, Brixton, Streatham. They're getting off the buses and they're looking for me. There's an alley that went underneath from the high street round to where, on the back of Sainsbury's, quite a notorious alley. And I would look over and I could see him look at me, and I literally had my back to the wall, best friend's gone, and he was like, mental health deteriorated. So I'm going to get onto the London Underground, commit another robbery, or just do something crazy. Big cry for help. I don't care if I die, whatever. Take this younger WZ kid with me. We get onto the tube. There's a man asleep. The tube's moving. The boy that I'm with starts going through his pockets. Tube's going towards South Wimbledon, and he wakes up. I'm standing there with a meat cleaver. Didn't intend to hurt him with a meat cleaver. And he's woke up, obviously in shock, sees me standing there with a meat cleaver, someone going through his pockets. He jumped up, caught his chin on a meat cleaver, so his chin's bleeding.
Oh, God.
Tube pulls up at South Wimbledon, doors open. he runs off. I walk into the neighbouring carriage, there's another man on there. I don't know if he's seen what's happened. I don't know if he got on at South Wimbledon, he's there and he's seen what's happened, but the tube starts going towards Collier's Wood and he comes at me and I'm about 7 stone. Yeah, I'm tiny and he's a big Sri Lankan guy. He's got my arms and we're wrestling, fall to the ground. And I remember the tube just shaking and swinging through the tunnels and the lights of the tunnel just, and everything's like flashing through my mind of Joe dying and singing out the window in Feltham. And then I just look up to the man like, fucking like, take the meat cleaver, like let go of the meat cleaver. And he's got the meat cleaver.
He's got it.
He's got the meat cleaver now. And my friend starts trying to get him off of me. And then my friend runs off and I've managed to get up. I run down a tube and then I turn around and then the man's there with the meat cleaver. And he's just hacking at me. And he chopped me down the side of the face. Yeah,
you've got a big scar there, haven't you?
Chopped me through the thumb. There's like pins holding the bone together there. Chopped me in the elbow, and then there was just a minor bit on the leg. And I jumped off the tube at Collier's Wood. So I was up against the door. They slid open, jumped off, and started running up the escalators.
Covered in blood, I assume.
Yeah. This was just open where it was like fleshy coming out. And then the only reason I knew I'd been tapped because I could see the white bone of my thumb.
I cut myself really badly once, and it didn't bleed until I saw it.
Oh, yeah.
And then as soon as you see it, it's just everywhere.
Yeah, because there's that split second.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And then a lady on the escalator told me about my face. Can you just go to hospital? Went to hospital. Was arrested at the hospital. But I was actually really I was. It sounds sick, but I was like happy that I'd been attacked or chopped because I just had this deep. By then, I just had this deep hatred for myself. And my mum was at the hospital. The British Transport Police. Yeah. And then
what did your mum do?
I don't know. She must have been in shock. But then by then I'm just like laughing. Like I'm there being stitched up, and I'm just like laughing.
Justin, this is awful.
Yeah, but that was just my life then.
I know. Yeah. I mean, I know because I said right at the beginning, because you'd used the word, you said I tell this story autistically or whatever you said. And I was like, I know, and I'm going to interject a bit because I don't want it to just be a story to people. Like I've sat here a couple of times and I'm going to do it again. I'm just like, it's awful. And I know it's your story. And I know you tell it all the time. And I know when I tell my own story, we just desensitize from it. You can become dissociated from it. But I'm hearing this again. I told you at the beginning, I didn't want to hear anybody else do the story with you because I wanted to be as organic as possible. I didn't know I was going to feel this much emotion. But when you tell the story, and I don't mean to interject too much because I know we need to go back to it, but you can see the child in you telling the story because you're reliving parts of it. So I know you're a fully grown man. Yeah. But I'm hearing the boy tell the story and I'm seeing the boy in the story as you tell it, because you're a great storyteller, by the way.
Thanks.
Not that it's a happy story to tell, but you are illustrating the story well with your words. You're painting a picture. And so it's like a horror movie.
Do you know what? I'm really glad you said that. It's like the boy telling the story.
Yeah.
Because I wrote my book when I was 23 or 24 years old. I'm 41 now.
Yeah.
I would never say the things I say in that book now.
No.
But I'm like, it's like I'm in that book. It's like a 14-year-old or 15-year-old boy is writing it.
Yeah.
It's been compared to a book called The Jack Roller.
Yeah.
Which came out in 1930, and it was written by Clifford Shaw, who was he was either a criminologist or a sociologist, about a delinquent, they called him, in Chicago, and he would jack roll, meaning rob someone. But he basically got the delinquent he was called, to write 250 pages for this book. And it was the first time a delinquent or that sort of behavior was humanized.
This is a very human story.
And my book has been compared, because I think he might have been around the same age, 13, 14, 15 when he was writing it.
Yeah.
And my book has been compared to this like classic in sociology and criminology, The Lost Boyz.
Because isn't this used in universities, your book?
Yeah, in set text, it's been studied. It's been turned in a number of universities, it's been turned to set text to be studied in criminology and sociology.
I mean, you were I know this sounds awful for those that don't get it, but like, you were born for a reason. Do you know what I mean by that? Like, I know you've been told that before. You must have been by other people.
Yeah.
And if you haven't, I'm absolutely 100% shocked. Your experience is greater than your experience. Your experience is here for a reason. It's to teach us all to see the pain of the kids that go through this, and to have the empathy and certainly as therapists and clinicians, to deeply see the child, and to see beyond the crime, and to see beyond the label, and to see the child, and to work from that level up, rather than to just pathologize, label, lock away. We can't do that. And I know that has changed in society since your time, but I still think some of the general public see bad kids as bad kids. It's just not that simple. And as you're telling your story, honestly, I've been a therapist for 20 years. There's very few people that bring me to tears, because in your job is to maintain the professional face. And so I'm very good at that, and I'm very good at doing that when I tell my own story. There's been two people, Nina Olk and you, sitting in that chair where I've had to hold back tears, and her story, as I said to you off camera, and for those that see this, hers coming before yours, so they'll know what I'm talking about. Very rare do I have to hold back tears, and I'm doing it. And I'm not cold as a person. I'm just good at maintaining professional face. Yeah. But it's hard to do that with your story.
Yeah, it's hard for me to understand that, whether that's like autism, or
dissociation.
It's hard to, you just live it,
But you are, when you said earlier, and we go back into the story, I don't want to hold the story up too much. When you said earlier you didn't really feel sorry for the boy because you committed these acts of violence or whatever, but it makes sense that you did that. You had no other way of expressing your own pain. You had no other way of understanding it. You had no one there holding you tightly, loving you and keeping you safe and putting those boundaries in. Like, that's the way the brain works, that the limbic part of your brain will take over if it's not managed at the front, and nobody was doing that for you.
Yes. It might sound like, I don't know, I'm not ashamed to say it or scared to say it, but I was just like a little boy, like deep underneath all of the madness and that, and it gets a lot madder.
Wow.
I was like, Justin was like a nice little boy.
Yeah.
And I just wanted love. I did just want love. I know it sounds pretty sad.
It doesn't sound sad at all.
Yeah, but that's what it was. But, you know, I ain't scared to stand up in front of 100 prisoners and tell that story and stand like this, because it makes them open up. Do you know what I mean?
Of course it does. Yeah. That's why I say your job is greater than your story. Yeah. There's something very deeply spiritual about your experience.
Thanks.
Anyway, the madness continues.
Yeah, the madness. So I got 4.5 years in prison for hurting, the guy with the meat cleaver and the other guy. And I ended up in H&P High down in Sutton. And they had just opened up a young offender unit from the overflow of Feltham young offenders. 18 to 21-year-old, you was a young offender then. So I'm now 18. I can't handle the chaos. So they didn't understand how to look after young offenders. Because it was a category A prison actually at the time, high security. And we were just left free for all. Like, people come in your cell, beat you up. I started to self-harm to get out of there. I didn't know there was such thing as a healthcare unit. I just needed to get out of this cell. Started self-harming. Officer comes along, takes me to a healthcare unit. Now, healthcare unit is for, prisoners that are physically ill, but it usually just holds mentally unwell prisoners. There's not a separate bit for young offenders in there. So now I'm 18 years old and I'm down on this healthcare unit. I'll go onto the unit. I've been back onto that unit 20 odd years later. And it is so quiet, And I just loved, it was so quiet. It like hurt my ears. It was so quiet. So weird. You could hear, like, there was this fuzzy feeling in my ears. They put me in this cell. There's no TV or anything, just a radio. And I just feel so calm and at peace. I'm laying on there. I'm away from all the madness in Malden, my friend passing. And then they're talking about putting me back up onto the young offender unit. So I started to self-harm. More. And then they moved me. There was a gated cell. They're called suicide watch cells. So instead of like heavy duty steel door, gated, like a gate, like an American sort of gate. So, and there was 2 of these cells. So they put me in there, and there's this gap between, so you can see slightly into the other person's cell. You could play cards and talk there. They put me in there, so then I'm learning new things. I'm like, okay, so they're now really worried about me, so they're not going to send me back there. So I have to keep on this act, like self-harming, to make sure they keep me down there. But they were like saying, this kid's down there. There's high security category A prisoners down there. And there was this man next door called Ned. And I keep talking to him. This is the ADHD. Keep talking to him, just trying to speak to him. He's not speaking to me. He's like really withdrawn. I find out that he's hanged himself on the thing, and he's covered himself in like his own feces. And then I'm more and more talking to him. And then one day he basically tells me he's not mentally unwell. He's on remand in prison, so he hasn't been sentenced. He's trying to be sectioned to then get hospital order instead. I hadn't got the 4.5 years by then. So then I'm like taking tips on this guy. Then I'm trying to be sectioned. That's when they called the psychiatrist out, who... I don't even like to say diagnosed, because I don't even know if it's official, but said I had borderline personality disorder, which I had no clue what it was. Ned's finally moved on. I'm listening to the radio. There's this horrific murder that's happened in Basingstoke. Someone's head has been found in a bush in someone's garden.
Fucking hell.
Body parts found in a local park, and they're looking for this guy called Richard Markham.
Oh my God.
I'm following the story now. And Richard Markham's been found in Central Park in America. I read in the Sun newspaper, British tourists have seen him, told the police, he's been arrested by the police. He's kept in a prison out there, then he's extradited to England.
Don't tell me he ends up next to you.
He ends up, there's like a rattling of keys, and then he starts walking down, and he walks past me, and then...
Was he a serial killer?
No, he basically, he had killed his best friend in his house.
And that was the body?
That was the body. He gets put into the cell next to me. We become friends. We're talking through this little gap, and he starts telling me all the ins and outs of the case, which weren't out in the media at the time. And he had I think he had battered his friend with a hammer, dismembered his body, thrown parts around town, head in a neighbour's garden, and he had put the arm in the oven and cooked the arm and
eaten it.
He had stabbed a fork in it, and he told me that hot human fat spout in his face, and he showed me the digital layout diagram from the police or from his like solicitors, and there was a little image of a arm on a cooking tray. But what he didn't tell me is that there was a plate with 2 bits of bread, ketchup, and a knife and fork either side of it. But he didn't eat the arm. But he was next to me. We become friends. Wow,
that's your friend.
Yeah, at 18.
That is disturbing to say the very least.
Yeah, obviously at the time I didn't know. It was just like a level of madness.
Well, look, I'm not judging.
Yeah.
You know, that's your neighbour, essentially, and you've got nothing else to do apart from talk to this guy. And look, again, how he became the version he was, I don't know.
Yeah.
So I'm not trying to sound judgmental when I say that. I'm just saying for an 18-year-old boy, for you, that is really not the ideal friend to have.
Yeah. Yeah, he become my friend. Like, so I move on to I got moved from there to another prison. I would actually wind him up. Now it sounds mad. Wind him up saying, "No, you're going to go to Broadmoor." Because I was reading a book at the time, and this person I was reading about, he was in Broadmoor. I'm like reading it, and I'm going to him, "You're going to go to Broadmoor, mate."
As you do.
Yeah, and then I get moved to Wood Hill. HMP Wood Hill had a young offender unit,
not far from here.
Yeah, Milton Keynes. Yeah. And then one day I receive a letter, and I open up the letter, and there's a little blue slip in it. I'm thinking, what's this blue slip? And it said, "This male has been thoroughly checked by the security or staff at Broadmoor." And it was from Richard, and he had, back on the healthcare unit in Highdown, he had thrown hot water over someone, done something else, they'd put him in Broadmoor. And then one day I start smashing up my cell. And then I didn't know that they use prison shields, and the door opens, they smash me to the floor with a shield, and then they start taking me off through the young offender unit, like they call it being bent up. So I'm bent up, I'm bent over, I've got my arms behind my back, and then they take me off to this place. I don't know where I am. Go through, and I work out this must be the healthcare unit. And there's an area that's all boarded up, and I'm still bent over, so I can't really see. I'm just looking up, and they open up this like boarding as a door, and then they take me through, and there's just 3 suicide watch cells, and in the far corner there's a desk and an old computer. This was like 2002, and there's a name card there. I can't see who it is. They put me in the cell. I'm going mad, kicking off. I've got wounds on my arms. I'm putting blood over me. I wanted to ask you this, like, what am I actually going through, right? So then I get the blanket, I put it around my head, I wrap it like a rag, and I'm covered in blood. I'm walking around in circles, calling myself a packy and stuff. Like, what is that? Like psychosis? What is it?
Well, going back to the externalization of the aggressor, I think the only way that your brain at that point, because obviously you're out of control, you've been infiltrated by lots of different serious criminals, and I say that as in the conversations you've had and all the different traumas you've been through. Think about anyone that's considered a predator. They haven't been able to deal with the guilt and the shame of the experience of racism, of the experience of hurting people yourself. Because as you said earlier, you didn't feel sorry for that boy because you'd hurt people, you'd done some seriously bad things. So all of that is just an externalization. It's trying to get that out of your system. It's trying to understand it. It's trying to be, instead of being the victim, you are the predator. So it's a form of externalization, but also probably psychosis as well, so a mixture of the two. But it's trauma. It's trauma in its rawest form.
I woke up in the morning sore as hell, the arms.
You must have been cutting quite badly at that point.
I covered up my scars with tattoos, but you can see, like, if you was to look close, you can see razor wounds, like all up my arms. I've seen some serious, horrible, horrific self-harm in prison. I'm sure. Like, extreme. People slicing their throats.
Which is, I mean, oh God.
Yeah, my friend Fergus Tracy killed a homeless man in East London. Someone told me he committed suicide in prison, but he had cut his arm and he was getting his ligament. Sorry, I'm saying these things. I don't mean to make you.
No, it's fine. I mean, I've got a history of self-harm, so I'm actually quite comfortable talking about it.
And he was calling me to his cell, and I opened up his cell flap because I was a cleaner, and he had sliced his arm and he was getting his ligaments, and he was waving at me by pulling his ligaments.
Oh God, he must have just been in such...
I know, horrific. And someone told me that he committed suicide.
I mean, his brain was fried by that point, let's face it. That is another level of dissociation. That is so sad.
So I'm in this gated cell, the suicide watch cell. You could step out from the door. The door was like bolted back to the wall, and then you could step out. So so in the morning, covered in wounds, I like stepped out, but I'm still in this, like, the bars are there, and I look to the right, and I just had this deep, overwhelming feeling of madness. And this is law of attraction, because I hated myself so much, and in the gang I just wanted the madness, and I wanted to be this sick guy to protect that inner child. And I would just attract, like, the maddest situations. And I looked to the right, and I looked to the cell card, and it said Cat A Huntley, and it was Ian Huntley next to me in the cell.
And anyone who doesn't know who Ian Huntley is, he was the guy, again, not too far, Cambridge, who it was the Soham murders. I'm sure most people will remember that, but again, not the most ideal of neighbours.
It was really, really, I could just say, like really confusing and uncomfortable. And I was self-harming later on in the day, and he was trying to have a three-way conversation, saying to his, the person watching him, person sitting on a computer, if the boy next door, stops self-harming, I'll give him some tobacco. That was him trying, obviously, act like he's fucking got anything human in him. And then there was another three-way conversation was absolutely. I didn't actually ever speak to him, but I could hear him speak it. And then,
were you not allowed to speak to him, or you didn't want
no,
to?
I could have spoke to him. Yeah, I just weren't really with it mentally by then anyway.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
But did you know who he was?
Yeah, I knew he was. Yeah, it was all. He was like, that was the
biggest.
It was the biggest story out.
It was, yeah.
So this was, I reckon I was probably there like August 2002, around them times. Someone there took a photo of him. Someone that was watching him took a photo of him in that cell, and it was all over. It would have probably been the news of the world back then.
Yeah, it would have been, yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, there was a three-way conversation. An officer had come over from the young offender unit because they would take it in shifts to watch you 24 hours.
Right.
Someone might do 6 hours, just keep switching. But I know that officer would have been like, biggest talking about Huntley's being over, you know.
Yeah.
And then he's like, Justin, come over here. Like, so he's like, oh, like the officers asked me where I'm from, asked me what football team I support. I say Chelsea, and then he's like, what football team do you support, Huntley? And he said Man U, didn't he? And it just dawned on me that those little girls,
yeah,
were wearing Man U tops. Yeah, they were my only. Well, I didn't speak to him, but like interactions. And then when I finally got to the phone, I told someone from Joe's family. Joe's family really supported me, and they started phoning up the prison. The prison was denying it, and then they moved me. Denying that I was near him, and then they moved me, and eventually they moved me to Aylesbury Young Offenders Institution, which was a young offenders for 18 to 21-year-olds serving 4 years to life. It was brutal. It was horrific, man. It was
more than what you'd seen in there.
Yeah. Well, none of them were as worse as Ian Huntley, of course.
Yeah, but I mean, also the ligament thing.
Yeah, that was in Aylesbury.
That was in it. Right.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm with you.
Yeah, I saw there was a boy called his surname was Ford. He ended up in a cell next to, so there was Huntley, me, and then Ford came in. He was a young offender. When I went to Aylesbury, I don't know if it was a year or so later, he turned up there. He started putting letters under my door about like God and Jesus and stuff. Okay. And then they start being letters about like I'm a sinner and other people are sinners and that on a unit. I saw a mental deterioration. I hadn't seen it before like that. They put him in like a strip cell where he can't harm himself. But then he somehow done something to the electrics. But he was coming out of his cell with his tray with rotten food on his plate, like mold, hair growing on it, walking up to the servery, and the boys on the servery were just putting his like potatoes and pasta or whatever just on that rotten food, and he was taking it back to his cell. He got sectioned and never see him again.
God.
But that prison, it stayed with me. What happened to me there, it didn't leave me for 15 odd, until I'd done EMDR therapy. So I'm on association. This kid's calling me a prankster. You prankster. I'm playing Paul, you prankster. Like calling me a joker. I'm like, don't call me a prankster. And he jumped up. He was like, what? And he just headbutted me. I had a broken tooth. He headbutted me. I fell on the floor. I looked up and he's standing above me. His head's bleeding where he caught my tooth. I jump up with a pool cue. Officers run over, they take him off to punishment unit because he's headbutting me. They put me in my cell. I'm in my cell thinking, what the hell was that about? Literally out of nowhere. Someone said to me, you know what he's in for? And I was like, no. He's like, murder and attempted murder. I was like, fuck, like this guy's going to kill me, yeah?
Oh my God.
This guy's going to kill me. So this guy was walking over a bridge in London, similar to London Bridge. And he was with a friend. He bumped into a group that he probably met once or twice. Now they're a team. Within seconds, they're a team, yeah? And then two skateboarders walk over. I said in another podcast they were foreign exchange students. I was getting it confused with this other prisoner that I was with that killed foreign exchange students, but they were skateboarders. Come over, they start to rob the skateboarders. Like this pack mentality, just come together, rob these skateboarders, beat them up, unconscious, throw them off of the bridge.
What?
40-foot bridge into the Thames, right? One of them never regained consciousness. He died. He drowned and died. And then the other one woke up floating past Big Ben. His rucksack was holding him up.
Oh, my God.
Now, I've been told this, and this guy has just attacked me. And I didn't know what ruminating was. I didn't sleep for 2 weeks. Yeah, I'm tossing and turning. Oh, my God, this guy's going to kill me. It was the start of a serious mental illness breakdown that, you know, most wouldn't come back from. And he comes back to the unit, and I'm serving up the food now, and I'm told he's going to be all right at me. He walks around the corner, he's just staring at me in the eyes, yeah. Those eyes did not leave me until I done EMDR. I could have killed a man for looking at me too long on the streets for the eyes, or I would run.
Yeah.
Yeah. That memory was horrific. Yeah, he's going to kill me. I must be for 2 weeks tossing and turning. He's going to kill me. It's season. He's just staring at me. There weren't no like, all right, mate, yeah, shake hands. He was staring at me. Eventually we shook hands, maybe a day or so later. I watched my back for him for about 1.5 years. I still to this day don't know if he was going to kill me. I pretended to be his friend to keep the enemy close. And I was so scared, the OCD started forming.
Yeah.
I started cleaning my cell so like everything was neat. And then my brain was telling, if you don't tap that 5 times, you're going to die, or that guy's going to kill you. So start walking around the prison unit when no one's looking, going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3. Oh shit. Was that 5? No, that was 4 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I was doing all these mad calculations in my brain. I started to think people were talking about me out the window. Yeah, that fucking Rollins, I'm going to... started self-harming again. It was like absolutely like horrendous. And he got moved onto an adult prison. And one day the officers, I lost my job, so I started becoming really violent. It was that if I thought someone had disrespected me or like said something about me, or they were just paranoid, ruminating thoughts, I would attack them, because then if I attacked them and I saw fear in their eyes, I wouldn't go back to my cell and ruminating, terrorizing thoughts. Yeah. It was horrific. Yeah. And I was aware of everything, like, oh my God, we share blankets. They're just washed and given back to you. So I had this extreme OCD, which I still have to deal with to this day.
Yeah, you mentioned it earlier off camera.
OCD mixed with ADHD and sensory, it's like, can be...
Well, they go hand to hand. If you've got ADHD or trauma, which ignites ADHD, then you're unlikely to get away with not having some form of OCD. Yours is just extreme.
Yeah, it was horrific, right? So I get moved on to the twos landing. You're moving on to the twos landing. I don't want to move, but I haven't got a choice. He was on the twos landing, cell 217.
This is the one that stared at you?
Yeah, the one that attacked me, that had killed that guy. He was on the twos landing, but he had been moved, I didn't get moved into 217, which was his cell. I got moved into another cell. I must have been absolutely hypersensitive. I'm laying on the bed. I'm absolutely petrified. Nighttime came, laying on the bed. I look at the back of the door. There's all scratches, tags. I always read scratches. There's things engraved. And I get up and it was his name. And it said, so-and-so was here. And I was like, oh my God, he's been in this cell. And I go to lay on the bed. Oh my God, he's been in this bed. I start sleeping on the cold prison floor. And like I said, sleeping under the bed. Yeah. And then the officer's saying, you all right, Rollins, a night officer? I was like, yeah, like they was having meetings about me. I didn't know, but I couldn't handle it. That 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like all this tapping, cleaning, sleeping on the floor. And then I just barricaded myself in the cell and just smashed the TV off of the ceiling, got the glass, sliced my wrist, set the cell on fire. And then somehow I got out of there. But I kept a bit of glass and a match. They took me to the healthcare unit. They took everything out of the cell. Another one of these suicide watch cells. So now I'm sleeping under the bed there I made a pillow out of a toilet roll. Yeah, and nurses are taking it turns to watch me. And then there's this officer called Bob Stevens. Officer Stevens, Bob Stevens. There's a documentary on Aylesbury, ITV, and it's on YouTube. And Bob is a big part of the documentary. And he came over, and he would, like, because he was respected in the jail, he was like, I'll look after Rollins. They used to call me Rolly. They used to think my name was Rollins, not Rollins. They call me Rolly. I'll look after Rolly. And I'm like laying under the bed. He's like, come here. And he slipped a sandwich under the door and some tobacco. And that bit of like, treating me like a human. And he said to me, you're the only prisoner, you and one other prisoner in like 17, 18 years of service I've ever cared about. And that basically, that kept me alive. But I still, because of, I don't know what I'd done, refusing to do something, they took me to the segregation unit, and I had that bit of glass and a match. And segregation isn't, you can't, there's no windows there, just plastic like over the windows. And the only thing to burn was toilet roll, set that on fire, use the glass to slice up again. Officer comes plodding along, and they're shouting, "Is he dead?" Like, how do you say that about like a human that's like suffering from mental illness? Fire was out, I couldn't breathe, because it's smoked out. I put the fire out, pure panic. He opens up the hole for the hose, puts it through. They just start spraying me, laughing. So now I'm getting hit with the cold air, the force of the hose, cold, can't breathe because of the smoke. And then once that's all done, like a drowned rat, they tell me I have to take my clothes off. I've got to go back to the back of the cell, put my nose up against the wall. They're going to come in with a riot shield. So now my wet body is up against this fucking shield, and then I'm walking backwards through the water. Now I'm going to have to step out onto the landing and put my nose up against the outside wall, and then I'm going to make my way into the neighbouring cell. And I looked down, and there was, by that time, there's fire brigade there, nurses. And I'm like 19, 20 years old now, like, fucking, they go into the cell, I'm on breathing apparatus. And then I don't know how I survived that, but when I was back on the normal unit, a nurse come over and she said, look, they're thinking about like, they're having meetings about like sectioning you, calling the psychiatrist out. I think that's how it worked. And I said, because I'd read that book about Broadmoor, I knew Richard Markham was outside, could they put me in Broadmoor? She was like, of course they could. Somehow there I had to, but it shows the resilience and the strength. Somehow I got the OCD and everything under control. So I was terrified of going. I was coming up towards the end of my sentence, terrified of going to Broadmoor.
Yeah.
And I got released back into the community, that mentally unwell, man. That was horrendous.
Into the community?
Yeah.
Without really any therapy or anything?
Nothing, no.
What the hell?
Back there, yeah.
I mean, for you and for everybody else, that's a concern.
Yeah, it was. I was very, very unstable. I was locking myself in the room at my mum's house, thin wooden door. It's probably like a normal wooden door, but to me it was ultra thin in my brain.
Yeah.
Not a steel door protecting me. And I was getting 5-litre bottles of Sainsbury's water, emptying them out and using them to wee in because I couldn't pass my mum and that to go to the toilet.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
So as you're released, you're still really sort of institutionalised and conditioned. Years
to...
So when did you decide to get therapy? What happened there? Because you had, just to be clear, you had EMDR 0.20, which is an upgraded, newer version of EMDR. And I think it's a phenomenal version. I use elements of it myself, but it's not as well known. How did you, because I mean, obviously, did you go back to prison again?
Yeah, so I'm at my mum's. Fall out of my mum, I'm on the streets, I'm sleeping back at that bus garage, in my like...
You went back there?
Because it's what I knew.
It's what you knew.
But then I started getting into more like serious crime because I couldn't, fit into normal society. I was very mentally unwell, and I got into a huge fight outside a club, and it's horrible to say that I was attacked by 14 people. 14 people can't attack you at the same time. Something's raining down on me. They're taking it in, like, they're steaming in bottle or something's caving my head in. And then I've smacked, because as a kid, if a gang would come, and it would happen all the time, you would find a bin, tip the bin over, a glass bottle rolls out, smash the bottle, and then, if you're on your own. So I'd done that. It was on camera, and I pushed the bin over, a bottle rolled out, smashed it. And within 13 seconds of the last person attacking me, I walked into the crowd where I was concussed and thought they were the attackers, and stabbed the DJ in the head or the neck. And then one was in the head, one was in the neck. I didn't know what I'd done. The police didn't know what I had done. They were there, and they arrested me for punching 2 people, but it happened so quickly. Anyway, I was going to go back to prison. And I was going through like some crisis, like I just weren't in a good place. And then someone said, why don't you go to therapy? Right. So I went to this 2008 before I'd been even charged for 2 GB8 Section 18s. Went to a therapist and just talking therapy.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go back to prison. Oh my God, all the OCD, all that stuff, the nightmare's going to come back. And she was like, we've got to go back to the beginning. Like, I was like, why don't go back? Talk about your childhood. And I said about being strangled, childminders. And she said, that's child abuse. I was like, no, it's not child abuse. Like something in, you're conditioned to your environment.
Yeah.
Like
no one had ever said anything like that to you before.
And I remember just feeling such deep anger towards like my mum, but I was so confused. There was so much layers of shit in my mind. I just couldn't understand it. How could someone say that about my mum, right?
Yeah.
But we also linked that the fear I had for that childminder's son was that same terror and fear I had for the racist bully, for members of WK, and then when I was at my most vulnerable state and actually a real person that had killed attacked me, then that was like the mental collapse of everything else that was going on.
It was the straw that broke the camel's back.
Yeah. And I always wanted to write a book, and while I was staying at my mum's house at the time, had my own place, but I didn't like being on my own, staying at my mum's house, and I was going at a computer at night, and then I was writing Lost Boyz. And the reason why it's so fresh.
Can I just hold this up for the camera? So Justin Rollins, make sure you can see it. And this is the book we referred to earlier that is now being used in universities. Yeah,
set text. Yeah, it's being compared to the Jack roller. That people have said it's the Jack roller a century later, because it was written by like basically, like I was saying, you're saying like it was like a boy. It's like a boy speaking. It's like that book is like the boy speaking. So that's why it's been compared to a classic piece of criminology text.
I mean, your life is just incredible, just what you've achieved since and what you'll still do with your life from here. But I mean, this book seems like it's the start of you starting to...
Yeah, it was the start. So I started writing it in 2008. It wasn't published till 2011. But, I didn't go to prison in the end because it was like a self-defense thing. I got community punishments because people were still hurt. And I got published, and my publisher, Waterside Press, they would get me talks at universities and things. I didn't know what PTSD was, didn't know what complex PTSD was, and I would always pull out. I'd always pull out of these talks.
Like, I can imagine
the
why.
Night before, sensory overload, tossing, turning, like headaches. Oh my God, are people staring at me? But when that book was published, and it was quite a big thing in my community and in the graffiti world, I didn't know what hypervigilance was. No
one had taught you anything.
I'm alert constantly for people coming to me. I mean, I was living in a flat at the time. You had to go through a couple of, like, the block door, another door, my front door, and then I had a fold-in security gate, and I'll sleep with an axe next to me, and I still believed people could get through to kill me.
Oh, God.
And if a man stared at me for too long...
That was it.
Yeah. And then, but the horrible thing was, is because Instagram wasn't around back then. It was like Facebook. But like walking down the road with my daughter, she was, probably 5 or something. And then like some guy gets out of the car, obviously I'm alert. And he walks behind, I'm like ready to like kill. And then he's like, I'm sorry, mate, I've read your book. And then I was so like, I thought I was healed, wasn't healed.
No.
I'm living in flashbacks. I'm living in sensory overload.
Yeah.
And now I've got a book out and my face is out there. I used to do a lot of press back then, BBC, This Morning, everything. But then if someone's looking at me on the street thinking, oh, is that? But I'm like watching them with the most evil eyes because I think I'm getting. It was such a horrible situation. So I just disappear like from the world and just leave the book. And then in 2017. My publisher got in touch and said, Professor David Wilson has turned the Lost Boyz to set text at Birmingham City Uni to be studied in criminology. Like, can you go up, do a talk? And it was like, I was in a bad place then, like, was just living in a bad place. Okay, I'm going to go up there. I'm not going to miss this opportunity. I get there. I don't realize 500 students had already studied my childhood. It was very overwhelming to me.
I'm sure it was.
And then I sat there. Professor Dave Wilson's asked me questions, and then I'm just being raw and honest, like I do. And then he was just like, couldn't believe of what a good speaker I was.
And you are. That is a fact.
Thanks. It's got better with EMDR. with processing all the trauma.
Yeah.
And then I was invited back each year, and it started to go into other universities. Then my speaking career started, but I was still going through, you know, the trauma, the eyes. And then I started Googling my symptoms, and I come across complex PTSD. It was very similar to what they call me, borderline.
Yeah.
Always saw borderline as a disrespect.
It is actually, in your case, hugely disrespectful.
Yeah. Well, in
In any case.
I believe that there's no such thing as borderline, bipolar.
I agree.
Like, I think it is
trauma.
Yeah, trauma. And,
it is.
you know, to tell someone that's been treated like the way they have as a child, and they're probably very confused, like I was, of what had happened.
Because it labels you as the problem.
Yeah, you're saying,
you're saying this person can't cope with, you know, they're reactive, their addiction. No. Yeah. They have been through hell, a hell you will never understand. Yeah. You have just medicalized them rather than looking at them and saying, what has happened in your life? Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. And so I found complex PTSD, and I thought, that is me.
Yeah.
Okay, how can you heal this? I can't keep going through this, you know, my family having to deal with me, my mood swings and everything. And then I found EMDR, and I was very, very lucky to find a therapist that NHS consultant and done EMDR 2.0.
Yeah, because it was, like I say, the newer form that a lot of people wouldn't know there is a newer form, but upgraded. And
we started that in end of 2019, I think, but then we went into lockdown, I think. But yeah, you know EMDR.
Yeah, I love it. It's my favourite form of therapy to use.
It's eye movement desensitization reprocessing. It was how trauma is stored in the amygdala.
Yeah.
And, you know, it plays over and over and over. You're living in the past.
Yeah.
I mean, like, this is very weird. I haven't said this before, but 80s music, like some 80s classic or some real haunting songs from the 80s, when I would hear them, I would like this. Anyway, after doing my EMDR therapy, and then I didn't have that same, I started like Googling the dates of like when these, it was all like around my, those years, 3, 4, them songs, they are playing in the background of when I was going through all of that.
Can I just explain that for people that don't understand EMDR? And a lot of the listeners will have heard me talk about EMDR a lot because I often refer to it, but the way that the brain holds the information, and the reason that eye movement was the first form of bilateral stimulation is because when we fall asleep and we go into REM sleep, there's that bilateral movement of the eyes. You know this because you've done it. And it's at that point that you're collating the emotional label to the information. So the information is the experience for the person or the memory for the person, and it gets stuck and frozen in time. That's why he said living in the past, but with the emotional label you experienced at the time. So fear or whatever that is. And that literally is like frozen in time in the brain, where the brain holds the emotional memories and the amygdala. So then what happens is, and this is a clinical fact, we remember things from the last time we recalled them, not from the time that it happened. So actually, every time you recall that memory, it changes ever so slightly. So it becomes even more scary, or you can become even more numb to it. So when you go back into EMDR, you are desensitizing, as you said there, but then we're using techniques to reprocess that memory. And EMDR 2.0, for those that don't know, uses slightly more mental processing techniques alongside the EMDR protocol. So that's just for those that don't know.
Yeah, EMDR, I believe, you know, it can heal. It can heal like most of the prison population.
Yeah, it can.
It can bring it can make a violent man not violent.
Yeah, well, look at your situation.
Because he's basically living in a hypervigilant state and he's in fight mode. Yeah. And something's happened.
It is one, I would say, and I'm very careful to say cure, but look at you. You are a shining, so I've worked with lots of people that have had, I mean, your story is very layered, but very extreme traumas. Yeah. And it does completely bring down that level of heightened fear, heightened experience. And it allows your, that frozen state, that going back to that memory, it allows that to slow down. And in some cases, well, and in your case, I would imagine, and in mine, completely stop.
Yeah, well, I used to walk down the road and I'd be thinking if someone, I'd always in fight mode.
Yeah.
And it was kill. It was like, I was a dangerous person. Obviously, I didn't go out and kill someone, but, you know, if I saw another like male that was a bit hyper vision, a bit of an attitude, looking, and you're going to just go at each other.
What do you do now if you see that person?
I don't. Well, the EMDR would have changed that.
Yeah.
But then also, I just don't look at in someone's eyes for too long.
So you've basically processed the information enough that you're not now going to be the magnet locking in.
Yeah.
That's the point, isn't it? It stops you locking in.
Yeah, definitely. So, yeah, and I don't get that intense feeling as well. If someone was to stare at me for too long, and it was it might be an aggressive male or something, I wouldn't.
That's gone.
And I would keep.
Just keep moving.
Keep moving,
because you're able to think. Because the problem is that when you're in that heightened state, the frontal lobe, the prefrontal cortex, it's not got the same amount of oxygen, because in fight flight, the oxygen from the very front of the brain drops to get the adrenaline and cortisol to do its job to keep you safe. So it's about re-establishing the right balance of activity at the front of the brain. And when you do EMDR, because you're lowering that amygdala response, you're able to maintain the balance at the front, which allows for analytical thinking, rational thinking, logical thinking. So what you do now is you're able to tap into that part of the brain.
Yeah. So like EMDR 2.0 is extreme.
Yeah.
And I think it's used for like is it more for complex PTSD?
It is, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Instead of, because the EMDR that was originally created was predominantly for those one-off incidents like military traumas, car accidents, those sorts of things. So EMDR 2.0 came about because of, like you say, the more complex and certainly the violent crimes as well, the ones that people like yourself have experienced.
Yeah. So with EMDR 2.0, it wouldn't be standard eye movement side to side. It would be a mix going in all different directions.
To confuse the brain, really.
So I'd go to prisoner staring at me, the fear, the level, and it was always my chest, pure tight chest. And then I would start the eye movements and I'll do a V step. I'll walk out to the left, walk out to the right, and I'll do backwards calculations, like 200 timetable backwards in sevens, and just scramble the brain. And you would just be like, your brain, like if I now close my eyes and I vision that person, I can't really see it. It's sort of the same feeling as when after the movie. It's like a fuzzy thing. And to show that how powerful EMDR is, I've worked in many, many prisons around the country, and I've been into old cells, where do a lot of work in prisons, been invited to go into old cells on that whole old healthcare unit where Richard Markham was. Yeah, you don't feel, or you might feel something, but you're not going away doing the rituals of cleaning your hands and washing, and oh my God.
It's not hypervigilant.
Yeah, you forget about it really quickly.
Yeah. It's amazing. You're going to have what would be considered, if we're going to say normal, what would be considered a normal response to being in that environment, rather than that heightened, like you sort of said it earlier, that sort of almost hitting psychosis point and feeling like you're engulfed by it.
Yeah. It's really hard for me as well to vision. Maybe I'm saying it with throughout the podcast, but it's really hard for me to vision that person of who I was.
Yeah.
But that's the most difficult thing with EMDR. I don't think might have done EMDR 2.0 for the attachment stuff, but I would have a very awkward relationship with my mum. And after like a business thing broke down a few years ago, and we worked out it was to do with attachment.
Yeah.
And then I had to go to the root to like my mum.
Yeah.
And that was really difficult to work on. But once I'd done that, it felt like I was freed, and like there was a huge weight off of my shoulders. And then because I would go to Malden, my town, before EMDR, I'd be jumping on a tube up to London, central London, and I would feel everything. I'd feel my friend there. I'd see the past. I would smell it, everything. But walk through there now, I'm just walking to the car going home. Like I don't feel anything. I don't feel some horrible attachment to the past and stuff.
No, I could see that. And I mean, this is why I loved EMDR. I'd always used hypnotherapy, and I'd always used a mixture of different modalities for psychotherapy. And then when I started to integrate EMDR, I literally couldn't believe. I almost felt like, what have I been doing all of these years, like wasting everybody's time? Although I hadn't, because hypnotherapy is powerful as a treatment also for OCD and phobias, but EMDR is just another level. So you can combine different things for different people. And I think, you know, but in your case, you needed a very clinical version of that treatment, because I think it had been such a high level of complexity and, you know, such a high level of mental breakdown and such a high level of pain and such a high level of, you know, witnessing other traumas for other people as well. Just you are incredible. And I think the fact that EMDR, but also the willing, and that's why I said earlier, and I really want to heighten this point, because any of those people that are listening now or watching on YouTube, they're going to hear somebody who narrates the story so articulately and so powerfully. And like I said, when you're watching and I'm in front of you and I'm looking into your eyes, I see you're embodying, this is why I'm trying to make the point, you're embodying the inner child. Yet because of the EMDR, you're not traumatized by it anymore. So you're able to embody it, you're able to go there, but in a way that is, as I've said throughout this podcast 2 or 3 times, painting the picture. You're not engulfed, you're not in the trauma state. That shows how powerful EMDR is, but it also shows how powerful you are, because a lot of people would never actually go to the effort of fixing it. They would have lost the ability to do that. I believe the higher consciousness or higher power in you, and Nina Olk said this, she said she thought she went through everything she went through to understand suffering so that she could pay it forward, so she could be of service and really help. I, as a therapist, try and stay away from the word help, because it can sound very egotistical. So I would say I support and assist. I actually think you help. I think you help others. And I think that's, I mean, some would say because of the history of abuse that I have, that it's a similar thing, but it's not, because I'm a therapist. So there is a sister support. For you, it is that higher power in you is here for that reason.
Thanks for saying that. It makes me think about who am I helping? And when I done a talk in HMP Home House in Stockton-on-Tees, talked in many prisons around the country, and I was thinking, going up there, South London, mixed race, big northern men, like, you know, how are they going to take me? But I just get up in the chapel, I'm me. I tell my story, make them think about the links in their childhood. Correct. And then do the singing in Feltham out the window, so then they know straight away, you know, like, he's standing up, he's being vulnerable, he's being real, and they just respect you. And afterwards, but I can feel the energy in the room. Big men, some of them serving life for murder, and they are going like, they're shrinking in their seat when I'm saying it, and they're turning into boys, and it's deep. And then afterwards they're coming up and they're like, can I have a word with you please, Justin? Shaking your hand, hugging, and then I've just planted a seed for them to, that's the way that I see it.
This is making me well up again. I don't know what's wrong with me today, but every time you speak, because it's so true, you know, it's so honest, and you've been so vulnerable, and you've been through so much. Yeah,
but I feel like, I think, you're brave to face your demons. Do you know what I mean? You're brave.
You are.
It's not like,
you are.
Yeah.
You are.
Yeah. So
I know you can't feel the same level of attachment to it, and I feel really honoured that you're here today.
Thank you.
But to share, not just with me, it's not about me, but the people listening, and to share, and with me. I feel really gifted by you today.
Yeah, I feel blessed to share my story with you, because I know that you understand.
Yeah.
Like, I know that you understand. I know other podcasts I've been on, you know, they don't understand in a professional sense. They've heard the stories, but you understand actually how everything works.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And I admire you so much, because it's rare to come across someone that's been through the level of violence and trauma that you have. And what makes it worse for me is, I think, as I said to you before, I'm a therapist, and yes, I've gone through some stuff myself, but I'm also a mother. And as I'm listening to you and seeing that in your eyes, and seeing that, and you're a 41-year-old man, you're not that much younger than me. We're of, the same, we understand the same language, because we were of the same era, 1978, you're 1984. But I can't help but feel that nurture and that mother come out when I'm listening to you, because I just think you did deserve better.
Yeah.
So much better.
Yeah, that's why, so like my therapist, she taught me so much, not just EMDR, she taught me about like boundaries, everything, just like a life coach.
Yeah.
And yeah.
How old was she out of interest?
I wouldn't like to say her age in case I get it wrong, because I told her I'm going to send her this podcast, but she's been like a mum to me, like the mum that I never
Was she a
had.
bit older than you?
Yeah.
I bet, I mean, she may well have kept a very professional face on, but as therapists, we are human. And I think one of the things that you forget as people that have never gone to therapy before is that we love our job and we love the clients in front of us. Like it is, obviously it's a love with boundaries and it's a love with clear, you know, you don't start to be too overstepping the mark because that person needs you to be safe and you recognize that. But that is a very motherly role. Yeah. And you know, I realised, because I didn't have a mother that protected me, that the most fundamental thing that you can have, and you mentioned the guy that said he'd never cared about anybody and he put the sandwich through and the tobacco, those moments of love, those moments of care, they are game changers. Yeah. But you're giving that today. Yeah. You're giving that in being vulnerable and by telling your story and by writing your book and with, you know, everything you do now. I think it's coming from the place of love that you always needed.
Yeah, definitely. I'm just a lot. I'm like ashamed of a lot of, the violent things I've done.
Do you still hold on to that shame? Or do you understand it was bad? And
I understand it was bad, but I do still feel levels of guilt for hurting, even as a kid, because I find it difficult at that level of violence, because it's not me. But then I was once told, because I hated, like I was called Sevens to my friends. People still call me Sevens to this day, but I hated like Sevens. But I was told in early therapy that you can't hate.
No,
because
you can't.
You became that. Obviously, I've moved well on from that now, but you know, you become that character to protect yourself.
Reminds me of a really good book called No Bad Parts by Richard Schwartz, who developed IFS Psychotherapy, another trauma-focused therapy, which looks at the internal family systems and it looks at the different parts of you that are essentially born from the trauma. So Sevens was a character that you developed to protect you. You said many times, well, not many, but a few times during the podcast that you had to protect the victim that you were. And you were, you know, I think some people are really deeply uncomfortable with the word victim. Yeah. I've said this before, but I'll say it again to you because we're having the conversation. So for those that have heard me, apologies. But I remember when I saw a social worker only 2 or 3 times after what my dad did. There was no help back then, as you know. And I remember one of them, who I actually liked, telling me, you're a survivor. And I was like, but I don't feel like a survivor. I feel hurt. I feel sad. I've got no one that's allowing me to do the victim bit. No one's allowing me to be a victim right now. It was basically, you've just got to get on with it, and you've got to go and see your dad in prison, and you've got to do. But I was like, but why can't I feel sorry for myself? Why am I not allowed to be a victim? And I feel like when you're not allowed to be a victim, this is where the sort of BPD comes in. When you're not allowed to be a victim, you become an angry, rageful teenager who has to protect the victim that you're not allowed to access. And I feel like good therapy should allow you to discover all of those parts and to be equally as compassionate to all of those parts. Yes, learn boundaries, and yes, learn right from wrong. But shame and guilt come about, and I've said this before, I'll say it again, only good people feel shame and guilt. Only good people feel remorse. The ones that don't feel shame, guilt and remorse are sociopaths and psychopaths, and they are a danger to society. But the fact that you still feel that is healthy to a point, and obviously you're past the point of disliking yourself. But I would wonder how much love and compassion you have for those parts of you as well.
To be honest, I don't know. I'm a very complex person. So like I could walk. I speak to myself constantly. I speak to myself through waking up, just racing thoughts constantly. I walk to the local shop in one. My mood's changing every 2 seconds. But I just have always had this deep belief deep down inside that I can achieve like anything I want. That I can achieve it. But something with EMDR, which I think is important, like we said about protection, and to show that EMDR works for the people that are listening, that before I started EMDR, like in the first like 2 sessions, it was like finding your resources.
That's right, yeah.
So like a safe place, which I never had a safe place.
No.
Finding a safe place, and then like what do you get wisdom from, love and protection. Now, my safe place, looking back now as a little boy, was a railway track, because even though there was dangers of a fast train, once you was on that railway as a kid, wandering the rails on your own, there's no other predators around. It's just you and the foxes. It's just silence at night. You might be with your friends, or many times I've got to get home, I've got to go, I'm on the railway tracks because it's safe. Yeah, there's no other one down in night. And London back then, for a graffiti tagger, a teenager, that late 90s, early 2000, predators. It was before London was gentrified. It was mentally unwell people out there, and the railway tracks was safety. But my protection, something happened last year. So in EMDR, you can, like you go to a place where if you're feeling anxious,
you pull in your safe place.
You go to your safe place and think about what you feel protected by. So my first protection in EMDR was my dog, Coco. She was a pit bull, chocolate pit, back in say 2007 I got her. But they're not like the pit bulls you see today. She was more like a skinny little staff. She was beautiful. She was aggressive to other dogs, loved humans, and I used to have her at my flat sometimes, but she lived with my mum. And she was my protector. So I'd go to my safe place and she was like my protector. And then I didn't speak to my mum for years. And then I moved on through EMDR, I moved on to my other protector. And I've never said this, and I never got to tell him, but his name was Femi. He was my best friend. And his name was Hyper. And he was a big guy, 6'5", strong man, fearless. And he was very, very respected. So they were my protections. And then last year, I knew I hadn't spoken to mum for a couple of years. I knew one of her other dogs got put down, and I knew the next one would be Coco. And I knew, just to be spiteful, she wouldn't tell me. And Coco lived till she was 17 and a half. She was chocolate. We called her chocolate pit, and she was grey, and her muscle on her head had like caved in. It happens as breeds when they get older. And then she got Coco put down, who was like my protector. And then
you didn't get to say goodbye?
Didn't get, but I knew she was going to do that, so I was ready for it. But that hurt when I was in that flat in Tooting where I lived. When I was very, very unwell, and I'd sit in the corner, and Coco would sit at the top of the stairs. It was like she was my eyes and the back of my head. And then about 2 months later, my best mate, I never told him that, he was my protector. And I was a big, scary guy when we were in this vision that I would have. I met him at a bodybuilding gym. I was 17 stone, very violent, but I was scared deep down. You weren't scared, 6'5". And then I had this vision when I was going to scary places in my mind. I'd close my eyes, we'd walk from Tooting, and everyone would look, 'cause he's so big. Or when we were walking through Notting Hill Carnival, we'd get spotted. And he was the ultimate protector, do anything for you, anything for his friends. And then he was phoning me from the hospital, and he had a heart attack. He's like, "Don't worry, brother, I'm out. I'm going to be out of here, get pacemaker." And then the next day, he just had another huge heart attack in the hospital, and he died. And then I'd lost my 2 protection figures in in a space of 2 or 3 months. Obviously, I didn't know what the difference between complex PTSD and grief. Boy, I never knew grief like that, man. But the reason I shared that story is to show how EMDR works. Because if I hadn't had EMDR before losing Coco and Fem, I wouldn't be here now. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. And also, I have to say this because they're installed in your soul.
Yeah.
They're not gone. And I lost my best friend a couple of years ago, a year and a half ago, Susie. And I always talk about her on this podcast again. I always will, because I will say her name if I can in every episode.
Yeah.
And she was my school friend, and she was the one that was there. We never spoke about stuff, very much like boys, actually. She had her own stuff, I had my stuff, but she was just a constant. And we always protected each other, very similar thing. And I always just assumed she'd be here forever, because you do, don't you? You don't ever think someone's going to go. And I think when you've dealt with trauma, and when you look at things through the eyes of the bigger picture, if you like, whether that's spiritual, God, universe, higher self, whatever you want to call it, you realise that energy is only ever redistributed. It literally, in the law of physics, it cannot be destroyed. Yeah. So if you tap into those people, it goes to the law of attraction, actually. Yeah. If you tap into something, it belongs to you. It's installed in you. Yeah. And the fact that you had to go to the protectors in your brain when you were doing that work, it meant that the timing was right. Everything is the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
And that's why I say the things that you went through, as horrific, and I don't think horrific is a strong enough word, but as horrific as what your life has been, I do believe you're a bit of an angel. I really, really do.
Yes, yes. Scary to think that, but I take
I actually do.
Yeah.
I actually honestly genuinely say that without any
I know it's going to sound proper out there, but when I was before EMDR, my visioning, like, I could feel the presence of, like, my friends, past friends and stuff, right? Like, just the energy and my law of attraction. If I tuned into it, I'm going to attract it. So I wanted to make a film. I don't want to go too much into the film, but we shot the film. But I would go to where, like, Joe passed, and 2 years later, I've got an actor playing Joe. Like, they're running down the stairs where Joe was, like, found in that area, and then we're shooting in Malden that evening or the day into the night, and Joe would have passed away. It must have been like 20. It would have been not 20 years. It must be like, let's say, like 16, 17 years ago. He doesn't have many tags left on the street. Yeah, they're faded. Or one of the people shooting this film, they got onto the tube afterwards, got on, or the tube they walked on, or got onto, and then they looked up and there was a Bath. It was like a Bath scratch. That was his tag, Bath WZ. It was there, and it was like we'd just been filming where he passed and everything like that.
Wow.
I had it the same when Fem passed. The next day I had to go to doctors because it weren't too well, and pulled up. Must be distraught, and the car in front of me put their brake, like they started up their ignition. I looked at the number plate was Fem. But so
God, you've been through a lot.
So I believe,
I believe whatever angel might be a word that a lot of people would think, well, again, some of the story would suggest not always been an angel, but I think that's who you are underneath.
But I'm willing to take, like, I don't like being on social media. I ruminate. So, something goes wrong, I could read a comment, it could just be whirling around in my brain. I'm trying to be a dad while being in control of my mental health, while running a business up and down the country. Yeah. I don't like being so. I'm an introvert. I can sit on my own. I like being on my own. I've got enough racing thoughts to keep myself company.
Yeah. You don't need any more.
Yeah. So, but I'm willing to be online and spread my messages and take take the shit and take the... That's what I'm willing.
Well,
to do.
I'm here to say that I'm here to say to anyone that thinks that they should or could give you shit, fuck off.
Yeah, you get it. But
you've got. I mean, I understand you've done some wrong things in the eyes of the law and socially wrong and all other things, but we have to remember why. You were a very, very hurt little boy, and you didn't get what you needed. Yeah. And when we look at psychology and we look at the clinical aspect of what's happening to people and the way that their brains are being altered as a result of their traumas, it makes sense from a clinical perspective. And we need to understand, because if we don't listen to people like you, how the hell are we supposed to learn how to help and fix the boys that could turn into to you, the you that you became? We need to understand, we need to hear, and we need to love. We need to come from compassion. Yeah. And I do think there's very few people that are going to understand suffering in terms of trauma the way that you do, and and abuse and those kind of things. And I think the fact that you're out there telling that story, seeing these big men in prison shrink and wanting to shake your hands, and they feel seen.
Yeah, that's so deep. that. But yeah, my journey through the prison system over the last few years, and I've worked in 26 prisons. I'm going out to HMP Windmill Hill in Gibraltar
Yes.
to work out there.
Yeah.
Paint murals and speak,
Yeah.
to the prisoners. And I've now been invited to the Gibraltar Literary Festival.
Wow.
Amongst, I think I'm number 30. So there's 29 other authors that are like the elite of the world.
Wow.
David Williams,
Wow.
Sir Jeremy Hunt, Wayne Sleep, like
Wow.
multiple Sunday Times best, Alex Partridge.
Wow.
Like,
I love
then,
Alex.
And then I scroll down and there's the Lost Boyz. Yeah, I'm very proud of that. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
I mean, I think proud doesn't really come close to how you must feel.
But I'm ready, like, because part of the literary festival, I'm going to lecture. I can't wait to get up, because all those people, they're from completely different worlds than me.
Your story is
ready,
incredible.
Yeah, I'm ready.
I really genuinely think you're an angel. I do.
I find that a bit over.
Well, I don't care. I'm going to keep saying it until you get used to it.
No,
Let's do the bilateral tapping as I say it to you. No, you are. You are.
I'm not.
I know you haven't
angel.
always been.
Yeah,
I'm not talking about what you've done then.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the person that you've become.
Yeah. I'm a complex person, I'm trying to be a dad, with like ADHD, and trying to understand my children that are like, at least 2 of them are neurodiverse. My little boy, ADHD, definitely ADHD. And I think my 10-year-old daughter probably has ADHD. So I'm still learning.
Which goes to show actually their own lived experiences plus their epigenetic experiences, the coding of it all.
Well, my 10-year-old daughter, she feels so bad for her, because she saw me maybe 5 years ago when I had a mental breakdown before I really went to EMDR and solved everything.
Yeah.
She saw when an OCD come back. I didn't think it could come back, and it came back. She started to have OCD behaviors, and I got her EMDR. She had some sessions.
Great.
And to know that I made my daughter feel like unsafe with my mental illness was such a horrible.
Of course it is, but look, you're a parent, I'm a parent. Because of trauma, sometimes, and again, both of us ADHD, complex PTSD, it's the same thing really. But, there are some differences between the two as well. But I haven't always been a perfect parent.
Yeah.
I've not always been, and I'm a therapist. And so when you're a therapist and you're there working with people, soothing them with the techniques, and then you go home and you're not always an ideal parent. You do hold a certain amount of shame and guilt, and you know you're not perfect. But I think when I say the word angel, I'm not being facetious or ridiculous. I mean, the purpose of your life is to deeply touch others, and to be able to get them to see themselves. So when I use the word angel, I mean that. I've got to be very clear with that. But, that's how I see you. And everything is about perception. And there'll be hundreds of thousands of people, if not millions, that will hear your story. And each one of us will have a different perception. And you are a million different things to a million different people, and it's okay to accept that. Even if you don't agree.
Definitely. Well, I can look at versions of myself. So like, I had this 15-minute documentary me and a friend filmed of me, black and white, when my book first came out, and I am like this in it. I'm talking, I'm like the hypervigilant, so I'm looking around, there's no one around, I'm still just looking constantly. It's horrible to watch. And there's no like filtering when I talk about the violence. There's nothing, I hadn't done the work to know. And know in the inner child and the reasons behind it. But so there's like different,
One thing I do want to say before we wrap up is your therapist, you've spoken about her a lot today. Are you allowed to say her name?
No.
You're not allowed?
I wouldn't I've never spoke to her about it, but I wouldn't out of respect for her,
Well, what I want to say is she sounds incredible. And obviously to do the work that she's done with you, she's used the technique and the training she's got. But I always believe that the relationship between client and therapist is as equally important as the techniques themselves. And I feel like she's had a really profound effect on you. I feel like I just want to say, as a fellow therapist, that I really appreciate good therapists doing good work, because often people talk about therapy through a negative lens. Oh, therapy's rubbish, it doesn't work. Well, I think you'll find that Justin is an exceptional example of how it can work. And I think that she's obviously an incredible therapist.
Yeah, she is, and she floats. So she just floats. You know, you meet people and they just float. But yeah, I did say on another podcast what she had told me that but I said it wrong, not majorly wrong. But on her first session with someone, she said to her, so I was just sort of blown away by it. So I would have been sitting there. And after her first session, she tells her supervisor, if I don't phone like 10 minutes after the session ends, phone the police. And it just made me like, I was so taken back about, obviously I'm there. She doesn't know who I am, like first session. And then obviously the other people she's dealt with, some less trauma, some more trauma.
Yeah.
And, you know, but she was willing to, you know, sit there with potentially really dangerous people, really traumatized people.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was powerful.
Says a lot about her, doesn't it?
Yeah. So, yeah.
What a legend. And I just wanted to say that because I think your journey is obviously massively impacted by the work that you've done, that she's assisted you in. And I feel like you're a really, really shining example of turning your life around. But there is something different about you. And I think that needs to be honoured as well.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Well, look, I literally could talk to you forever, but the cameras will run out.
Yeah.
And I appreciate what you're doing. I mean, podcasts are sometimes salacious and clickbaity to get views.
Yep.
I'm so uncomfortable with clickbaity stuff, but because I really like the story, and I think I could never cut this up into anything other than the true reality of what it is. The fact that you go out there and you share your story endlessly, you've written a book, you're doing the university stuff, you're doing the literary stuff, you're doing the prison stuff. Your life has become telling the story for the right reasons, not for the wrong reasons, not for views. Like you say, you're not a social media fan anyway, but for the right reasons. And I know you know that there's a lot of work in all of us to be done throughout the rest of our lives, but I really want to say thank you for doing what you've done today and what you continuously do, because it makes a huge difference to society.
Thank you. I was really excited about coming on your podcast because I know you see it from a different perspective, and how you're healing people. It's been deep, and I really appreciate you having me on your podcast. Thank you.
No, thank you. Honestly, it's been amazing.
Thanks.